Before we start, the video is at the top of the screen. She wonders when she stopped feeling sleepy. Her body tells her she's exhausted, but after so many grueling days, even her fatigue and hunger have gone now. Once she finishes this batch, she still has to fetch holy water. After that, she has more charms to make. She closes her eyes, her face tightening. She just wants to rest. She lets out a quiet sigh. By the time she finishes the morning's work, her hands are trembling. She isn't hungry, but she should probably force herself to eat something before she collapses again. Someone suddenly shouts, saying there she is again, slacking off in a place like this. She startles and jumps to her feet from the bench she has only just sat down on. The reason her life is so miserable is that horrible priest. He mutters that the charm is as useless as ever. Frowning, he asks if she cannot even make a simple charm properly. Priest Johann Chastel shakes his head, saying she really does enjoy cutting corners. He adds that the scrap of paper could not purify even a millimeter of miasma. He never treats the other maidens like this. Why is he only so cruel to her? Maybe he really does hate her. The thought makes her eyes sting with tears. He frowns and asks what she is crying for, reminding her that she is a saint and should stop acting like that. His voice grows even sharper as he says she is a saint of the great temple and that he will not tolerate such disgraceful behavior. He adds that they do not need some hysterical girl crying in the hallway. He points an accusing finger at her and asks if she understands. Unless she wants to be expelled, she should get herself together. They do not need someone so spineless under this. He tells her to motivate herself, as though her life depends on it. She has endured this torment for so long, determined never to give up. With nowhere else to go, she has forced herself to survive this life. But today, right now, he suddenly yells that if she hates it so much, she should quit being a saint. She freezes. The thread she has been desperately holding on to for so long finally snaps. She suddenly screams that she quits. Glaring at him, she declares that she quits being a saint. He stands there completely dumbfounded while she turns and runs. Outside, she drops onto a bench. Calling him an idiot under her breath, she mutters that she is never going back there. After her outburst, she withdraws every coin of wages she has saved. She has barely spent any money since moving into the Great Temple. All she takes with her is her favorite bag and the memories she carries. For the first time in over a year, she walks through the capital alone. On the eastern side of the capital, beside the slums, she finds a quiet, abandoned park. A weathered sign states that the land is for sale. Later, the seller stares at her in disbelief, asking if she really wants to buy that piece of land. He quickly recomposes himself and apologizes, explaining that it is just unusual for someone to want such a piece of wasteland. It has been more trouble than it is worth for them. Once the purchase is complete, she sits on the lone bench in the empty. She thinks that, from today onward, this place belongs to her, a place where no one can bother her. She quietly activates a barrier around the park, then uses magic to make the old bench soft and comfortable. Curling up on it, she closes her eyes, thinking that this tiny abandoned park has become her new home. Her family, the Damricks, were barons. When she was 10, her father passed away. Her much older half-brother inherited the title, along with her mother, who was not the baron's legal wife. She was kicked out of the house. Her mother then remarried another man, and she was abandoned. After that, her half-brother took her in. Perhaps he felt guilty, as she had nowhere else to go. They probably planned to kick her out after the saint certification ceremony. All noble daughters are required to go through the ceremony when they reach the age of 13. She is sure she was just a massive burden to that family then. She hardly ever spoke with her half-brother. She was recognized as a suitable candidate and finally left home to live at the Great Temple. A lot of things happened in those days, but looking back, they were still quite peaceful. The hell started about a year later. The priest stands before the temple staff with a grin and proudly announces that, starting today, he has been appointed as the new priest of the temple. He introduces himself as Johannes Chastel, the 7th prince of the Holy Chastel Kingdom, and says it is a pleasure to meet everyone. Despite becoming a priest at the young age of 15 on merit alone, Johannes' personality was absolutely the worst. For some reason, she became the target of his power torment, and by the time she realized it, she was a complete wreck, both physically and mentally. And today, finally she had reached her limit. She quit being a saint. The corners of her lips curl up as she swears she will never go back there again. She was so tired after she left. It is still only noon, but she thinks she will take a power nap. Meanwhile, Johannes sits at his desk, fuming. He grumbles that everyone around him is useless before throwing a stack of documents onto the desk, complaining that the reports are full of lies. Everyone knows the branch temples are rotten to the core, but if they are going to cheat, they should at least be smart enough not to get caught. Instead, they are just embarrassing him. He mutters that the Pakanir branch temple only looks successful because of lies and dirty tricks, while the Killard branch temple has been useless from day one. Already irritated, he storms over to a guard and demands to know where Alm is, ordering him to bring her over immediately. He freezes when the guard calmly says he cannot because she is no longer at the temple. Johannes just stares before demanding to know where she went. The guard casually replies that he has no idea. Johannes repeats those words in disbelief, then demands to know how the guard could let her slack off like that. The guard looks completely confused and reminds him that he was the one who kicked Alm out. Johannes' brain visibly stops working for a second. The guard then awkwardly admits that, honestly, he is relieved. Alm has been putting up with endless insults, verbal abuse, and bullying. Johannes may be a prince, but he has treated an innocent woman horribly. As a knight, the guard knows he should have stepped in, but the temple's rules about keeping everything secret left him feeling powerless. Even so, he is happy Alm managed to escape someone so awful. Johannes points a shaking finger at him, reminding him that he swore loyalty to both the royal family and the church. Just then, the other saint candidates come rushing over and immediately start pointing at Johannes, calling him complete trash. He stomps his foot like a spoiled kid, demanding to know what everyone's problem is when all he did was ask where Alm went. One of the maidens says she saw Alm leave earlier, but has no intention of telling him where she went. Introducing herself as Duchess Kazara Darren, she proudly declares that she fully supports Alm's decision. The other maidens quickly chime in, announcing they support Alm too. Johannes snaps that they are all talking nonsense and orders them to bring Alm back because a mountain of work is piling up while she is off doing who knows what. Kazara immediately shoots him down, reminding him that he was the one who told Alm that if she hated being a saint so much, she'd quit. Well, she did. Johannes suddenly finds the wall incredibly interesting as he keeps staring at it. Kazara then asks if he even knows the biggest reason Alm hated being a saint. Purification, healing, and maintaining the barriers are supposed to be shared between all the saints. In reality, though, Alm has been forced to do every bit of it herself while everyone else has been forbidden from lifting a single finger. And another thing, she was also made to handle tasks other than saintly duties, like sorting documents and carrying heavy things, only then to be scolded every time for being slow or having messy handwriting. Drawing holy water was supposed to be a rotating duty, but for some reason, she ended up doing it every day. Even closing her eyes from exhaustion got her scolded for slacking off. Even though she arrived earlier than anyone else for the early morning prayers, she was told to come earlier. Even when the garden flowers wilted, it was all blamed on Alm for her not being pure enough. Kazara suddenly looms over Johannes like a ghost and mutters that anyone in their right mind would run away from a crazy, power-mad prince like him. She admits they were foolish too. When they first met Alm, they kept their distance because she was just a baron's daughter and refused to accept her. By the time they finally felt guilty enough to help with her work, it was already too late. Their help was completely useless. But seeing Alm run away with everything, she had finally woke them up. From now on, they swear they will never let Alm return to that miserable life again. The saint candidates have all joined forces, and Johannes has officially become public enemy number one. Johannes suddenly yells that they are all so noisy. He says none of them seem to understand just how incredible Alm's talent really is. Legend says the first king of the Holy Chastel Kingdom purified the land alongside a saint who had mastered light magic. After she became queen, her bloodline mixed with the nobility, allowing girls born into those families to awaken the gift of light magic. Those gifted children are chosen through the saint certification ceremony. Alm is one of them, but unlike the others, she has an absurd amount of magical power. When Alm draws water, every drop is packed with healing magic. When she makes a charm, it is 3 times stronger than a normal one. He declares that, to put it bluntly, there is not a single person alive who can compete with her. That is exactly why he made her do all the work. He needed her power for his plan. Kazara dryly repeats plans. Johannes suddenly perks up, his eyes sparkling with ambition as he declares that he is going to change the country. It has rotted to the core, and he plans to rebuild every corrupt temple with his own 2 hands. People can call him trash all they want, but to him, everyone else is the real garbage. If Alm becomes the strongest saint, she can sweep all that garbage away. He admits he may have gone too far sometimes, but insists it was simply his way of training her. Thanks to that, her power has only grown stronger day by day. That earns him a huge kick from Kazara, muttering what is he talking about, justifying his power torment by forcing his self-righteous ideas on everyone else. The other maidens point out that it was never training in the first place. It was just plain torment. They demand that he shave his head and apologize. Johannes looks at them with teary eyes, points a finger at the group, declares that he will remember this, and then runs off. Kizara watches him leave before glancing out the window, quietly wondering if Alm is doing okay. Meanwhile, Alm lets out a big yawn and stretches, saying she has not slept that well in ages. For the first time in over a year, she sleeps peacefully without having to worry about any. She even uses magic to make the bench soft and fluffy beforehand. Now all she wants is a nice cup of high-quality tea. She raises a hand, a magic circle appears, and the ground beneath her instantly becomes fertile. A moment later, tea plants begin sprouting from the soil, giving her a tiny tea plantation in no time. She even changes the quality of the soil itself. This strange magic is useful. Just 3 months earlier, life had been completely different. The first time, she simply imagined a radish. One popped right out of the ground. Since then, whenever she pictures a plant, she can grow practically anything. At the Great Temple, everyone was left speechless the first time they witnessed it. She then tells the tea plants to harvest themselves, followed by fermentation, water, and boiling. Reaching into her magical bag that can store and preserve just about anything, she pulls out a teapot, teacups, and a selection of sweets. She is sitting back with tea and snacks, enjoying what she considers pure happiness. It has been over a year since she has been able to relax like this, and she cannot help thinking she is glad she found the courage to leave. Meanwhile, Johannes is pacing around in frustration, wondering what on earth is going on. Did Alm really leave? He heads to the bank, where an employee tells him that Alm came by earlier and withdrew all of her wages. Feeling sorry for her, he even slipped in a little extra. Johannes is completely caught off guard. He cannot believe she actually left him. In his mind, she was supposed to help him cleanse the country of corruption. Once his ambitions came true, he had even planned to name her the Great Saint and let her live a comfortable life. Instead, it feels like everyone around him has suddenly turned against him. He dramatically drops to the floor, wondering where she went and begging her to come. A passing maiden immediately tells him to keep the noise down. On a stormy night in the slums of the Holy Chastel Kingdom, 2 small children sit inside their tiny house as it rattles from the howling wind. The little girl, quietly, says the house is going to be swallowed by the sand soon. The boy replies that he knows, but there is nothing they can do. The slums are a forgotten place. Even with the desert sand constantly burying everything, nobody does anything about it. The wells keep getting buried, making it impossible to draw water. It is all because of that endless sand. Meanwhile, inside her barrier-protected park, Alm is sound asleep. In her dream, she thinks that living somewhere this peaceful and carefree feels like a miracle. It is so relaxing. She is glad she put up the barrier. No one can bother her, and she can laze around all she wants. To her, it is paradise. The next morning, she stretches and looks up at the clear blue sky, thinking what a beautiful day. It is like yesterday's strong winds never happened. This is only her second day after leaving the temple, and she cannot even remember the last time she enjoyed such a peaceful morning. Mornings are supposed to be like this. Then Johannes' annoying face suddenly pops into her. Out of pure spite, she declares a brand new rule for herself. Starting today, she is allowed to sleep as much as she wants. Farmer scientist Alm Dendrick is fully embracing her homeless life in an abandoned park on the edge of the capital. Then she suddenly notices something and freezes. A huge pile of sand has gathered against the barrier. She wonders where all of it came from. Did yesterday's winds dump it here? Figuring she might as well clean it up before breakfast, she uses magic to gather the sand into giant balls before casually rolling them. Problem solved. Unaware, she has just done something much more important than cleaning up. Alm has gotten so used to solving every little inconvenience with her ridiculously useful saint powers that she does not even think twice about it. Later, she enjoys lunch while thinking this whole homeless life is working out even better than she expected. Honestly, it is pretty great. Maybe all these incredible magical abilities bloomed because of everything she went through at the Great Temple. She enjoys her meal, thinking it is so delicious. Being able to eat as much as she wants almost feels unreal. Until recently, every single day was a night. Some days, she could not even bring herself to eat. The memories she would rather forget come back. She stares quietly at her food. Suddenly, Johannes snaps at her and demands to know how long she plans to keep staring at her. He stares at her with a frown and a stick in her hand, looking like the villain he is, and reminds her that her break ended long ago and warns that if a saint leaves behind even a single crumb of food, she will be severely punished. She snaps out of it. At that time, she was just tough with food in her bag, no matter how long it was in there, though it never spoiled. She has just realized that there's a lot of food and drink in there. It's a time for a party, she thinks. She pulls out a glass of grape juice, takes a sip, and silently toasts to her wonderful new life of peace and solitude. She does hope the people at the Great Temple are not having too much trouble because of her sudden departure. She especially worries about Lady Kazara and the other saintesses. What if Prince Johannes has started bullying them instead? Then she remembers what they told her before she left. If it came to that, they would just punch him right in his big dumb face. Thinking about it makes her smile. Lady Kazara and the others are daughters of marquises and counts. If anything ever happened to them, their families would not stay quiet for long. Besides, everyone there has always been far more dependable than she is. Maybe the tables have turned over there by now. Whatever happens, she's never going back. Now that she finally has the freedom to enjoy life, she plans to make the most of it. So she decides to indulge in the forbidden pleasure. A second nap. Meanwhile, back at the Great Temple, Johannes glares at everyone with pure rage, points a finger at them, and demands to know if they are even listening. He yells that they should all be out looking for Alm right now. He repeats it again. Go find Alm. The temple staff all stare back at him with completely blank faces, their expressions practically screaming, "Yeah, what about no?" He can repeat himself a million times, but nobody is moving. Completely baffled, Johannes reminds them that he is both a priest and a prince of the kingdom. Do they even realize what will happen if they defy him? Kazara casually mutters that he sounds like a buzzing bug. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Johannes freezes. Did she just call him a bug? Kazara then points toward the knight standing and says she does not think Johannes understands the situation. They are all on Alm's side. Johannes' eyes widen. Even the knights. Kazara calmly replies that, of course, they will still perform their normal duties. What they will not be doing is following his tyrannical orders anymore. He has to pay for everything he did to Alm. Johannes stands are trembling before turning around and marching off. Kazara simply mutters that he bolted. Storming down the hallway, Johannes fumes that everyone has lost their mind. It has only been 2 days since Alm left, yet somehow the entire temple has turned again. They claim they will still do their jobs. Yeah, right. To him, the combined efforts of the 3 holy maidens still cannot compare to Alm alone. If nobody else is going to look for her, he will do it himself. He starts thinking about where she could have gone. Her family's home? No. The Baron Thurik's family would never risk sheltering a runaway saint. They barely even contacted her before. Then where is she? Suddenly, an idea pops into his head. Wait, what if she already regrets leaving? Maybe she got lost. Maybe she wants to come back, but cannot find her way. His eyes suddenly light up. That has to be it. Without another thought, he takes off running, reassuring himself that everything will be fine. He is even willing to be merciful and reduce her punishment to just 1 day in the punishment room. Kazara and the other maidens immediately appear behind him, looking so done with him. A holy spear suddenly smacks him. They point out that it is still punishment. He spins around and yells at them not to swing those things around so casually. Ignoring him completely, Kazara casually mentions that he has a visitor. Prince Lionel, the 5th prince, has arrived. Johannes freezes. Prince Lionel? The king has 7 sons born to the queen and 3 concubines. Among them, Lionel is the only son of the true queen, making him the next in line for the throne. Johannes quickly heads over to greet him and apologizes for keeping him waiting. Lionel politely replies that the interruption is his fault instead. Although they are half-brothers, Johannes has always viewed Lionel more of a lord than his brother. Lionel wastes no time getting to the point. He wants to discuss the matter they talked about before. The miasma. Johannes becomes serious. Miasma is the dark energy created from people's negative emotion. Misfortune, envy, greed, and death all naturally produce it, and normally only priests and saints can purify it. Keeping it under control is one of the Great Temple's main responsibilities. Lionel points out that, over the past few years, the amount of miasma appearing has dropped dramatically. Johannes agrees. He has repeatedly sent priests to places where miasma should have formed, yet nothing was there. That is exactly why he submitted a report. Lionel says he personally investigated as well and found the same. It is almost as though someone else is secretly purifying it first. Johannes blurts out a confused "huh?" Why would anyone do that? Lionel admits it is only a theory. If someone is secretly gathering all that miasma for a darker purpose, That would be a serious problem. Changing the subject, Lionel asks if anything unusual has happened around the slums lately. Johannes says not that he knows of. Lionel then mentions hearing rumors from his retainers that someone from the temple has been seen around the slums investigating. Johannes immediately asks if someone from his temple was really seen there. Lionel nods, adding that it was apparently a short girl dressed like a saintess. Johannes nearly chokes. A short saintess? Lionel watches his intense reaction and asks if he knows something. Johannes denies it right away, but his expression says otherwise. But he is already convinced. It has to be Alm. There is no way it is anyone else. He has no idea why she is wandering around the slums, but that does not matter. He is going there right now. Lionel casually says that, if it is a mysterious saintess, he is curious enough to investigate himself. Johannes blurts out that he absolutely cannot. The slums are dangerous. It is no place for a prince. Lionel simply replies that it is only an investigation and that he can handle himself. Johannes nervously trails after him, desperately trying to change his mind. He rambles that the slums are right next to the desert, and it would be a shame to ruin such nice clothes. Lionel brushes it off, saying it sounds like the perfect chance to see things for himself. Johannes' face instantly goes pale. This is bad. If Lionel reaches Alm first. Before he can think of another excuse, a maiden appears and reports that an urgent problem has come up at the Bakir temple that requires Johannes' immediate attention. Lionel simply says he will be on his way. Johannes can do nothing but stare in horror as Lionel leaves, screaming after him. The little brother tells his older brother that the water jug is already empty. The older brother says they have no choice but to head to the eastern district to fetch more. Carrying heavy water pots, the two make their way to the well, only to find a crowd gathered around it. A smug merchant points at the well and casually says those are the rules. Anyone from another district has to pay a usage fee to draw water, 20 rubila per use. If they cannot afford it, they are free to get water somewhere else. The villagers immediately explode, asking if he has lost his mind. How is anyone supposed to afford that? The merchant simply shrugs and says it is only the price of 2 loaves of bread. Surely that is not too much. Unless, of course, they would rather go thirsty. One of the boys suddenly charges forward through the crowd, angrily saying it is always like this. He demands to know why they are pretending not to understand. They know perfectly well the well in their district is buried under sand. The villagers beg them over and over to fix it, but they ignored every request. Now they have the nerve to charge them for water. The crowd shouts that it is tyranny. The official immediately shuts them down, declaring that these are the king's orders. If they cannot pay, then they can collect rainwater instead. And if they are still unhappy, they are welcome to start a rebellion. It will just make it easier to throw them all in prison. The older brother quietly clenches his fist while the younger one looks up at him with worry. Meanwhile, back at the great temple, Johannes is buried under a mountain of paperwork, grumbling the entire time. He wonders why he has to deal with all these corrupt temples and greedy priests stuffing their pockets with dirty money. They all worm their way into their positions, so he cannot even fire them. The more he thinks about it, the more convinced he becomes that the whole system needs to be torn down. And for that, he needs Alm. As if the day was not bad enough, the door slowly creaks open, and one of the maidens peeks inside to inform him that there is another problem at yet another temple. Meanwhile, Prince Lionel arrives at the entrance to the slum. His guards nervously ask him to reconsider, but Lionel says he has never been there before and wants to see it for himself. Once they cross the bridge, it feels like a totally different world. It is hard to believe this is still in the capital. His guards tell him this is dangerous. He should go back. He glances at them and asks, what are they talking about? This is why he has guards. Besides, he does have some sword skills, so they should stop worrying too much. He thinks still this place is worse than he imagined. He wishes he could do something about it, but right now he still lacks the political power necessary to do so. Did the saint really buy land here though, but why? He wishes he could change things, but right now he simply does not have the political influence to do so. Did the saint really buy land here? But why? Just then, a soft, cheerful voice reaches. It says that a cat nap that ends right before sunset is simply the best. Lionel blinks. A woman's voice. Following it, he reaches the abandoned park and freezes. Alm is lazily lying across a bench, happily munching on snacks. She complains that her daily routine is completely ruined before declaring that snacks are truly the work of the devil. Lionel just stands there, staring. What is this woman doing? He calls out, asking if the suspicious woman is the rumored saint. Can she hear him? What is she doing here? This is hardly the place to nap around and eat sweets. He walks straight into the barrier surrounding the park. His guards instantly draw their swords, demanding to know how she dares attack the prince. Lionel quickly tells them to stop, but he tells them, enough. He understands now. The barrier covering the whole park, the mysterious saint, and the suspicious Johannes, who's clearly hiding something. It all makes sense now. This is a holy sanctuary, a top secret. This barrier requires an immense amount of energy to adequately maintain. So to ensure this, she constantly indulges in crackers and sweets at the peak of laziness. Simply stares at him while slowly eating another snack, then she flatly tells him no. Not even close. Lionel jerks back in surprise. Then why is she here? More importantly, why is a saint wandering around without even a single holy knight guarding her? He asks for her name. Quietly wonders why some random stranger has suddenly shown up to bother her. Judging by his clothes, the people surrounding him, and the noble air about him, he is probably someone important. Unfortunately, all she wants right now is to relax in peace. Suddenly, Lionel's eyes go wide. He practically jumps into the barrier, demanding to know if she did not hear him. What is her name? Startles so badly she practically jumps out of her skin. On pure instinct, she blurts out that she is Dendrick. Lionel finally settles down and says that means she is from the Dendrick barony. In other words, she really is a saint from the Great Temple. Thinks that she quit recently before asking who he is. He apologizes for introducing himself so late and says he is Lionel Chastel, the 5th prince of the kingdom. She freezes. Then she just stares at him, wondering why a prince is casually wandering around the slum. What? Trying to end the conversation as quickly as possible, she politely tells him it is probably time for him to. Lionel says there is no need to worry about him. He will be just fine. He then draws a sword and points out that the moment he introduced himself, she immediately tried to send him away. He says she is not carrying out her duties as a saint. She bought land in a place nobody ever visits, and now she seems determined to avoid him. Putting it all together, he concludes, very suspicious. Heart starts pounding. What is she supposed to do? She absolutely does not want to go back to the Great Temple. If that is the case, she only has one option. Meanwhile, the people of the well complain that the official has gone too far. There is no way they can afford those ridiculous fees. Some suggest taking their complaints all the way to the royal palace, while others point out that even this well has been neglected for years. Someone proposes confronting the official together, but everyone quickly shoots the idea down, saying it would only get them killed. The little boy stares bitterly at the sand-buried well, thinking that everything is the sand's fault. If it were not for all that sand, they could actually use the well. Then another powerful gust of wind sweeps through the area, blowing sand everywhere. At the same time, quietly activates her magic. Lionel watches with interest, casually commenting that this is getting unexpected. Meanwhile, declares that no matter who comes looking for her, she is never returning to the Great Temple. She tells everyone to go home. Her magic surges, and a giant mass of sand rises into the... Lionel watches the scene unfold, casually remarking that she is pretty impressive. One of the guards admits he has absolutely no idea what is happening. Lionel calmly replies that it seems he is quite disliked. Since the well is usable again, there is no reason for them to stay. He politely apologizes for disturbing her before leaving. Drops onto the bench with a tired sigh, relieved that everything somehow worked out. Then she notices the enormous pile of sand nearby. Where did all of that even come from? She decides she might as well send it back to the desert. Meanwhile, the villagers stare at the well in complete disbelief. The sand is gone. The well is usable again. That means they no longer have to pay outrageous fees just to get water. The official is about to have the shock of his life. Sure enough, the official stares at the well in confusion, muttering that he knew something strange was going on. One strong gust of wind later, the sand is gone, and the well is working again. He wonders how that is even possible. If this keeps happening, how is he supposed to extort money from the poor? Right behind him, Lionel suddenly speaks up. Extort money from the poor? Is that what he just said? The official jumps and spins around in panic. Lionel cuts him off before he can make an excuse, saying that although this trip to the slums did not accomplish what he originally came for, it has certainly uncovered something even more interesting. Now, he would like to hear the full story. Meanwhile, back at the abandoned park, settles onto the bench, thinking she can finally relax for a while. She still cannot figure out why the prince came looking for her in the first place. How did they even find out she was living here? After a moment, she decides not to overthink it. Those are tomorrow's problems. Right now, it is time for a sweets party to lift her spirit. Prince Johannes stares at his brother with his mouth hanging open before blurting out that he actually met Alm in the slum. Prince Lionel calmly confirms that he. As soon as she realized he was a prince, though, she practically chased him away. He admits it was a little rude, but says he is more curious about why she is living in a place like that. She even has a high-level barrier surrounding the entire park. Looking at Johannes, he says he has a feeling he has something to do with all of this. Johannes actually has the decency to look embarrassed and awkwardly mutters, while avoiding his gaze, that it is all just a bit of a misunderstanding. Outside the office, the maidens listening through the door immediately snap, asking if that is what he calls a bit of a misunderstanding. Lionel casually remarks that it seems rather noisy outside, prompting Johannes to panic and quickly shut the door. He insists that someone from the Great Temple will bring Alm back, so there is nothing to worry about. Unfortunately, the maidens have been leaning against the door the entire time, and the moment he closes it, all three come tumbling into the room. Johannes slowly turns to them and asks how long the three saintesses have been standing there. Lionel simply crosses his arm, deciding that since this is a matter for the Great Temple, it is not his place to interfere. His business is finished, so he heads back to the palace. Johannes quickly chases after him, but without even looking back, Lionel casually comments that Saint Alm is quite an interesting girl. She is strong-willed enough not to be intimidated, even by a prince, and her magical talent is exceptional, at the very least, grade B. He would very much like to meet her again. Johannes comes to a complete stop, then asks in a shaky voice what exactly he means by that. Lionel simply bids him farewell and walks off. Johannes starts yelling after him like a kid whose favorite toy is about to be taken away. Kizara quietly remarks that it seems Alm has managed to catch the future king's attention, and more importantly, she is relieved to hear Alm is safe and doing well. Johannes suddenly declares that he is going to bring Alm back himself, but the maidens immediately rush over to stop him. He snaps at them to be quiet, insisting that he was the one who discovered Alm's talent first, and there is no way he is letting someone else take her. She has to be somewhere in the slums, and he is going to find her. One of the maidens nervously grabs Kizara's sleeve and asks what they will do if he actually reaches. Kizara calmly replies that she has no intention of letting him get away with this. She activates her magic, and the other maidens excitedly point out that it is a spell only saintesses can use, a sealing technique that binds the wicked. A glowing ring shoots toward Johannes and instantly transforms into ropes that wrap tightly around him. Kizara has successfully cast Light Ring Seal. Johannes crashes to the floor, yelling that it hurts and demanding to know why he cannot. Even Kizara looks pleasantly surprised, admitting she never thought she would actually pull the spell off. The other maidens immediately praise her, joking that her new skill must have awakened after being exposed to such an evil priest for so long. Even while tied up, Johannes still finds the energy to protest that he is not evil. Kaisara casually replies, sure. The group then casually starts discussing what to do with him, eventually deciding the temple garden sounds like a good place. Johannes desperately objects, asking them not to turn him into a garden ornament without permission, but the knights completely ignore him, carry him outside, and toss him into the garden anyway. Still refusing to give up, Johannes argues that Alm is all alone in the slums and nobody knows what could happen to her out there. Kizara fires back, saying that is a pretty rich thing to hear from the very person responsible for putting her in that situation. Annoyed, Johannes suddenly breaks free from the sealing spell, forcing the maidens to join forces and try purifying him instead. He scoffs, asking if they really think something like that would work on a priest like. A moment later, it does. Meanwhile, Alm is casually sitting on a tree branch, eating an apple, but she feels a bit uneasy. Alm cannot stop thinking about the man she met yesterday. He said he was a prince, but what was he doing all the way out in the slum? Did he come to bring her back? It did not really seem like it. More importantly, was it actually okay to chase a prince away? Is that a crime? Is she about to get arrested? Her imagination immediately runs wild, picturing wanted posters plastered all over the capital with the headline, "Former Great Temple Saint now homeless in an abandoned park, chases prince away." If that rumor spreads, she will never be able to stay here. That absolutely cannot happen. She has finally found somewhere she feels comfortable. The once abandoned park is now filled with shiny vegetables, a beautiful flower bed behind the bench, and a large apple tree loaded with fruit. What used to be nothing but a patch of wasteland has become a little paradise, thanks to her magic. She grows vegetables and fruit, stores the harvest inside her magical bag, then restores the land and plants something new whenever she feels like it. One day it is a vegetable garden, the next it is a flower garden. This is her personal utopia, a slow, peaceful life that repairs her heart from all the power. She refuses to let anyone ruin it. Just then, she senses someone standing outside the barrier. Looking over, she spots a little boy nervously peeking at her. Realizing he probably lives nearby, she walks over and asks if something is wrong or is lost. The boy quietly explains that all the sand was blown over here yesterday. Alm immediately remembers the giant pile of sand she moved. Right then, the boy's stomach lets out a loud growl, making him freeze in embarrassment. Smiling, Alm asks if he would like an apple since she has plenty. His eyes light up as he asks if she really means it. She happily replies that her bag is full of them. The moment he takes a bite, his eyes sparkle. He excitedly says it is the most delicious apple he has ever eaten. Looking a little too proud of herself, Alm starts showing off, saying she also has pumpkins, daikon radishes, freshly picked tomatoes, and even strawberries she is especially proud of. By the time the boy leaves with a grateful bow, she realizes she got completely carried away and handed him all kinds of food. Meanwhile, the boy wonders where such an amazing person even came from. Back in the slums, everyone is still celebrating because the well is finally usable again. They no longer have to worry about paying ridiculous fees just to get water. One of the villagers wonders what on earth happened, while another insists the heavens must have taken pity on them. Someone else excitedly adds that the corrupt official was arrested too, so maybe the gods really are watching over them after all. Just then, the older brother comes running over in a panic, finally spotting his little brother. He scolds him for wandering off alone because it is dangerous, but suddenly notices the mountain of food in his arm. He asks where all of it came from. The little brother excitedly explains that someone gave it to him. He says there is an amazing park filled with trees growing everywhere, along with countless fruits and vegetables, and that the mysterious woman there shared them with. His older brother gives him a skeptical look and says there is no way a place like that exists outside of. The little brother insists he is telling the truth. He even says there is an angel living in the park. Yesterday's sand was blown over there, which means, before he can finish, an elderly woman walks over and asks if everything he just said is really true. The old lady asks the child to tell her more about the angel in the park. Meanwhile, Johannes declares that he is definitely bringing Alm back today. Last time he tried, he got himself into a bit of trouble. He never expected those 3 maidens to become so strong. This time, however, he is not alone. An entire army stands behind him. Under the pretense of searching for the saint together, they plan to bring her back. By now, the other 3 saints must be exhausted. There is no way they can stop them. Victory is his. Suddenly, the ground gives way beneath him. A hole opens up, and he drops straight into it with a horrified scream. The knights rush over and peer inside as he groans. What the heck? A hole! He looks up and calls to the knights, asking if there seems to be some kind of hole there. It is actually pretty dangerous. Hidden behind the bushes, the 3 maidens cheer. Operation Surprise Pitfall is a complete success. At the bottom of the pit, Johannes realizes they are the ones behind this. The knights tell him to stop complaining. They even dug the hole themselves. He snaps that they have to be kidding. Fuming, he stumbles to his feet. He is both a priest and a prince. Do they realize what they have done? They cannot seriously think they are getting away with this. The knights point out that they even prepared a sturdy ladder for him. It is high quality and easy to climb. He glares at them. Does it look like that makes up for any of this? Everyone seems to be on Alm's side. Fine. No matter how many times they stand in his way, he will never give up. From the moment he met her, he made a vow. This country is rotten to the core. He wants to create a land as pure as her smile. No, the country cannot change on its own. They have to be the ones to change it. Kizara glances at the knights and sighs. He is still saying stupid things, isn't he? Can she just drop a rock on his head or something? Meanwhile, Alm jolts awake from a nightmare. She lets out a sigh. That was an awful dream. Since she woke up feeling so unsettled, she decides to grow some fresh fruit to cheer herself up. At that moment, a group of people from the slums watches from behind the trees. They found it. It really exists, just like he said. As they step out in front of the park's entrance, and notices them and freezes. There are so many people. Who are they? The old lady steps forward and apologizes for barging in with such a large group. She explains that they are all residents of a city slum. Apparently, she gave fruit and vegetables to the people. Is that true? Alm realizes. She is talking about that child. Well, Yes, she did give him some. The old lady nods. She knew it, so the rumors were true. She really can create food whenever she wants. Awkwardly admits that she can, fresh fruits and vegetables at least. The old lady takes a deep breath. She says she will not beat around the bush. Then, all of a sudden, she bows her head and desperately begs to share some of her crops with them. They are pleading with her. Simply blinks, too stunned to react. But then she lowers her gaze and hesitates. This is turning into something a little complicated now. Making enough food for this many people will be exhausting, and actually, she got a bit carried away and gave that boy some food. She just wants to spend her days in peace and quiet by herself. Suddenly having to deal with so many people is a bit too much. What if they start showing up here every day? But well, this is all her own fault. And they do seem to be struggling to find food, so refusing them is a bit too much. The old lady tells her she understands that it is troublesome to be put on the spot with such a request. The sand disappearing from their well was already a miracle, so asking for anything more will be pushing their luck, right? She blurts, sand, and then says, well, was taking the sand a problem? She did kind of take it without permission and used it to build her walls. She then says that as an apology for taking their sand, she will share some food and vegetables with them. The lady's eyes widen with shock as she realizes she's the one who made that miracle happen too. The lady blurts, is she a god? That makes her silently smile, but then she laughs and tells her she's neither god nor a saint, okay? Meanwhile, a messenger reports everything to the king. After sending him away, the king rubs his chin and thinks. So, the rumor about the saint escaping the great temple was not just a rumor after all. This is quite an unexpected turn of events. She makes a small farm and wonders if it will really be enough. In the end, she goes through with it for several reasons. When the people ask if they can have some of her crops, she finds herself unable to. Since she cannot say no, she agrees to grow as much as they need, convincing herself it should not be too difficult. After all, she used to be a farmer. The people burst into tears of relief, saying they no longer have to worry about starving. Well, she is helping people after all. If someone is in trouble, of course she is going to help. It is not like she spends all day thinking about slacking off anyway. Besides, compared to being worked to the bone every day at the Great Temple, this is a walk in the park. Feeling satisfied, she declares that her powers can finally be put to good use. Meanwhile, Lionel tells himself he has no intention of getting involved, but his curiosity gets the better of him, and he decides to check on her anyway. He cannot help wondering if Saintess Alm is doing all right. For some reason, he just keeps worrying about her. Maybe it is because she is such an unusual girl. The moment he arrives, he stops in his tracks. A huge crowd has gathered outside the park. Standing before them with a loudspeaker, Alm tells everyone there is no need to be shy because there is plenty for all of them. The people from the slums gratefully accept the vegetable, asking if it is really okay to take so much. One person says it feels like a dream come true. Another excitedly says they can finally make plenty of healthy meals with all these vegetables. The children happily bite into fresh apples, calling them delicious, while an elderly woman tastes some grapes and says it is her first time eating something so heavenly. Lionel can only stare at the scene in complete disbelief. The line begins to disappear as everyone receives their share. One after another, people thank Alm before heading home. She lets out a long sigh and stretches her arm. She is exhausted, but the smile on her face says it all. She actually pulled it off. Far more people showed up than she expected. Before she even started handing out food, people had already lined up all around the park. She feels pleasantly tired. It is the kind of exhaustion that comes with knowing everything worked out. At least now she can relax without feeling guilty. Just then, Lionel walks up behind her and remarks that maybe she is not such a strange girl after all. She lets out a startled yelp and launches herself into the air, jumping onto a tree like a squirrel, and starts trembling. Lionel quickly tells her not to be afraid. He only came to see how she was doing. He also apologizes for the way he acted the other day, admitting he was rather rude. Addressing her as Saintess Alm, he assures her he has no intention of harming her. He then looks toward the vacant lot beside the park and asks what she was doing there. From where he was standing, it looked like she had been handing out food to the people from the slum. Without saying a word, Alm jumps back down and uses her magic, and giant root bursts out of the ground. As a tree loaded with apples sprouts from the ground right before his eyes, Alm casually tells him there is no special reason behind it. She is simply helping people. Everyone was hungry, so she grew some food and handed it out. She tosses AJ apple to him. Lionel catches it and stares at the fruit in shock. It appeared out of nowhere, Unbelievable. He wonders if she is blessed by the goddess of harvests or something. Alm repeats, the goddess of harvests. Then she asks if this is not the kind of thing every saint can. Before Lionel can answer, her clothes suddenly change. He blurts out, "Wait a second, what was that? Did she just change outfits?" With an embarrassed smile, she explains that she got into the habit after having to wake up early every day for work at the Great Temple. It is simply a way to save time. To save time? Lionel repeats in disbelief. She is using instant outfit changes with magic, as if it is the most normal thing in the world. She is even more unbelievable than he imagined, yet she talks about it so casually. Shaking his head, he decides to let it go and asks if she plans to keep helping the people in the slum. Alm hesitates. It is definitely hard work. Lionel quietly watches her. Noticing his expression, she asks what is wrong. He says her determination is admirable, but he wants to offer one piece of advice. She should seriously reconsider giving everything away for free. It is for her own sake, and more importantly, it is not good for the people receiving it. Alm blinks in confusion. What does he mean? Everyone is happy this way. If she starts charging for it, would that not only cause problems? Lionel admits she is right. Thanks to her efforts, many people have probably been saved. Some of the people living in the slums even have jobs. Naturally, they would be happier if everything were free. But that is exactly the problem. She is still young and has yet to see the true nature of people. People should never become used to receiving things for nothing. Soon enough, she will understand exactly what he means. Still unconvinced, Alm puffs out her cheeks. Meanwhile, in the holy kingdom of Shashtal, the Prime Minister stands by a window laughing. So the saintess has finally fled the great temple. At last, an opportunity has presented itself. With this, he can finally bring that upstart prince Lionel down a peg or two. Prime Minister Grandel of the Holy Kingdom of Shashtal, although he holds significant political power within the kingdom, the royal family has such strong authority that they far outweigh his position. His ambition is to prevent the noble and pure fifth prince, Lionel, from succeeding the throne. If Lionel did indeed ascend to the throne, that would only serve to solidify the royal family's political power even more. He grumbles, why even a king? An absolute monarchy is ridiculous and will only lead to the demise of the country. It is obvious. They can just look at the spineless king they have just nabbed. The royal family is just for decoration. Only those with wisdom and a clear vision of the future should be allowed to lead the people. That is right. Someone like him. The best way to do that is to manipulate the next king candidate and turn him into a puppet. But fifth Prince Lionel is too arrogant, strong-willed, and talented to control. Even if he were to remain in the position of Prime Minister, controlling him would be a challenge. To make matters worse, there's Johannes Shashtal too, the seventh prince and head priest of the Grand Temple. He unquestionably supports Lionel, so if the fifth prince were to be crowned, with Johannes and the temple backing him, Lionel's influence and power will no doubt grow even further under a church and state cooperation system. Which means the key to all of this is the saintess, Alm. He is sure Johannes drove her out with some sort of power torment. If he can win over this heartbroken saint, then it will be a checkmate. For this, he is going to need that prince. He needs to see him right away. He then runs out of the room, saying things are starting to get pretty interesting. His staff watches him leave, whispering to each other. He rants so loud about all of his schemes, he's surprised the royal family hasn't caught wind yet. Watching him makes them super nervous. Wendell Shashtal, the first prince of the Holy Kingdom of Shashtal, asks the Prime Minister what he wanted to discuss. The Prime Minister replies that there is a saint who is in desperate need of being saved by him. The prince repeats, a saint? After hearing the whole story, the first prince says, so his little brother Johannes has been neglecting and mistreating the saint. What a fool! She is an important sacred being, a descendant of the first saint. The Prime Minister says he knew the first prince would understand. He is relieved that, unlike his brother Johannes, the head priest of the Great Temple, the prince realizes how important the saint truly is. The first prince mutters, good grief. He admires Johannes's work ethic, but making a young girl cry is incredibly immature. The Prime Minister says indeed, if someone who truly understood the saint were by her side, someone like the first prince, he is sure she would feel much more at ease. The prince replies that he knows. If it had been him, he would have handled everything much better. For a moment, the Prime Minister's mask slips, and an evil grin twists across his face as he thinks he has taken the bait. Now he only needs one final push. Wendell Shashtal, the son of the second queen, is said to be the most handsome among the seven princes. He inherited his mother's beauty and is practically her spitting image. Ever since he was old enough to understand such things, he has captivated the hearts of countless women. Even though he already has a fiancée, he is still known for parading around town with different women on his arm. His behavior earns him the title of the Playboy Prince around the palace. The Playboy Prince has absolutely no interest in politics. If Wendell becomes king, then the Prime Minister's plan will work perfectly. First, Wendell will charm Alm with his good looks. Then he will expose Johannes's mistreatment of her, turning public opinion in his favor while all the blame falls on Lionel. The people will be captivated by the tragic tale of the mistreated saint and the handsome prince who saved her. Then the throne will be his. The Prime Minister tells the prince that the saint is currently living in an abandoned area of the slum. The prince blurts out, "What? That is just awful." Then he declares that he will personally bring her back. Still, he is getting rather tired of the women around the palace anyway. He dramatically strikes a pose and declares for his poor saint to wait for him, while the Prime Minister grandly announces for everyone to make way for the handsome prince, even though no one is there. However, Wendell has no desire to go anywhere near the filthy slums, so he postponed the trip for an entire week. Meanwhile, Alm sits alone on a bench, completely exhausted, her eyes dull and lifeless. She feels like everything has gone right back to the way it was. Over the past week, she has been pushed to her limit in every possible way. She stops shaking and wonders how things ended up like this. At first, everything had been going so smoothly. Diary, Day 1. A strange prince warned her not to give her crops away for free. She ignored him and carried on. She was busy and tired, but everyone else was happy. Day 2. People started asking her to grow even more kinds of vegetables. Day 3. The children complained that the apples tasted different. Day 4. People were now storming into the park, demanding that she give them more food. Day 5. They even started fighting with one another over the vegetables and fruit. Day 6. She is completely drained, both physically and mentally. Constantly creating crops while dealing with difficult people has finally taken its toll on her. She has reached her limit. Right now, all she wants is to get some sleep. She wishes this were all just a bad dream. But once again, they arrive like zombies, asking for strawberries, apple, grapes, lemons, watermelons, oranges, bananas, mangoes, tomatoes, lettuce, radishes, pumpkins, broccoli, and cabbages. She stares at them in horror. They are really here. It was not a dream after all. If anything, it is only getting worse. She looks at them with a horrified expression. What the hell is wrong with all of them? Why have they all turned into monsters? Then she remembers what Lionel said. People must not become accustomed to being given things for free. The two brothers glance at each other. The younger brother says something weird is happening. The older brother replies that he knows. The people seem to have gone crazy. Probably everyone except them. Everyone wants Alm's crops. They just keep eating and eating. Alm thinks to herself that she has had enough. At this rate, her peaceful life in the park will be completely ruined. Unable to take it anymore, she screams that there are no more fruits or vegetables left, so everyone should just go home quietly. The crowd immediately turns furious. They snap at her, asking if she is joking. She can grow food so easily, so how can she suddenly stop now? The two brothers watch from the side. The older brother says it was not just his imagination after all. The crops really did start tasting strange. It is probably because of all the pressure she has been under. Alm closes her eyes. Why is everyone being so selfish? She just wishes someone would help her. Just then, the first prince's carriage arrives. He steps out in all his glory and asks if she is all right. Holding out his hand, he declares that he has come to save her. He looks around with a frown and mutters that such a young girl has been forced to live in such a dreadful place. It is simply pitiful. He says he has heard everything about how horribly she was treated at the Great Temple and tells her not to worry anymore. Now that he is here, she can finally rest easy. He spreads his arms wide and tells her to come with him. Together, they will return to the palace and deliver divine punishment to his foolish brother. She can leave everything to him. After all, he is the first prince. He will show her what true happiness is. Alm gathers sand around herself once again. Suddenly it forms a giant, grumpy-looking version of herself with countless arms, each one wielding a different weapon. She mutters under her breath that these troublesome people just keep showing up one after another. All she wants is to relax, drink some nice tea, and enjoy peaceful cat naps. Instead, everyone keeps selfishly doing and saying whatever they want without thinking about her. Finally, she snaps and screams at all of them to get out of her sight. At that moment, a divine being suddenly appears. Alm feels like she has been transported into a field of blooming flowers. The divine being gently tells her there is no need to get so upset. Then long vines sprout from the goddess and reach toward the prince. They wrap around him and lift him into the air. As he struggles, he shouts, "What is this? Let him go at once. He is the first prince." Instead, the vines carry him away and gently drop him into a bed of flowers. Wrapped in warm leaves, he feels so comfortable that he no longer has any desire to resist. It feels just like a mother's embrace. Alm stares at the divine being with wide eyes and blurts out, "Who is she?" The divine being looks at her with a gentle smile and asks if she frightened her. She explains that she has been quietly lending Alm her strength all this time. After all, they have been growing all those crops together. Hearing that, Alm suddenly remembers what Prince Lionel told her, that she was favored by the goddess of good harvests. She stares at the divine being in disbelief and blurts out, "Is she the goddess of good harvests?" The divine being tells her she has been keeping an eye on her from the shadows, watching her enjoy her new life at the farm. But then it seems her heart has been quite troubled. She was worried, so she decided to come out, hiding just a little. Alm nervously scratches the back of her head with a stiff smile. She admits that she really was trying her best in her own way. But before long, everyone started acting so selfishly. She never imagined things would turn out like this. Had she known, she would never have offered to help them in the first place. The divine being tells her this all came about because she pushed herself too much to begin with. She started growing these crops to save those starving people. Such a pure and kind-hearted motive. But gradually, as the time went on, the demand for her food increased, and that is what caused her heart to wither away. Such a pain. She just needs some rest. She wishes she could relax alone. She knows she felt all those feelings, but there's no need to be ashamed. This is what it means to be human. But despite that dissatisfaction in her heart, she still continued to create crops for those people. The moya moya covering her heart seeped into the crops she created, and anyone who ate them began to feel that dissatisfaction well up inside of them too. What does she think happened then? The moya moya became even more, then staining more and more food she created, and those who ate it became even more moya moya. And so began the vicious cycle. The result is that strange way those people were behaving. The divine being gently tells Alm that she unknowingly cornered herself. Loving others is an amazing thing, but she must also learn to love herself. Without that, true compassion cannot exist. She then hands Alm a single flower and tells her it is okay to be a little selfish sometimes. Alm accepts the flower and smiles softly. Okay. The goddess smiles and says that is all she wanted to tell her. She has already sent that sparkly little boy back home, so there is nothing to worry about. She has also purified everyone, so they should not trouble Alm anymore. What happens from here is entirely up to her. Before sinking back into the earth, the goddess gives her one last warning. She should stop giving everything away for free. It is terrible for the goddess of good harvests. Brand. After that, Alm apologizes to everyone and explains what really happened. By then, the people have already returned to their senses. Their memories of the incident are hazy, but they do remember constantly asking her for more and more fruits and vegetables. Seeing how sincerely she apologizes, they all tell her the same thing. They are the ones who should be apologizing. None of this would have happened if they had not made such unreasonable demands of her. They admit that they failed to show her any consideration. In the end, everything works out nicely. Alm decides she is not comfortable handing out food right outside her home anymore. Instead, she opens a shop. The owner is away for a while, so she has been asked to look after the place. He agreed surprisingly easily, but she decides not to think too hard about it. Finally, she spreads her arms wide, flashes a bright smile, and announces Alm's shop is now open. Hours are 7 a.m., 8 a.m., and 5 p.m. to 6 p.m., with the shop being closed on Mondays and Thursdays. She will only sell the fruit and veggies that she can produce normally, but they will still be much cheaper than the market price. This will be her new, easygoing way of doing things. Even so, people are still buying things from her with huge smiles. The two brothers munch on the apples and both exclaim, "Delicious," at the same time. The little one says he told him the angel apples are the best. Alm blurts out, "Angel?" Then she tells them, "Please, no more of this angel or God stuff." Before she realizes it, the place has become a small hub where people enjoy gathering. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister shakes with anger. He curses the saint, wondering how she managed to use a giant tree root to get rid of the first prince. Isn't that a bit crazy? Could it be that the typical handsome type just wasn't to her liking? But he won't give up. No matter what crazy, unknown power she has, he will definitely bring her over to his side because, after all, Even though the first prince failed, there are plenty more princes where he came from. She had better watch her back. Kizara is left utterly stunned when she hears the news. Johannes has escaped from the Grand Temple. A royal knight explains that one of the guards on night patrol spotted him sprinting away as though his life depended on it. Kizara groans in disbelief, wondering if he even realizes what time it is. The other saintesses sigh as well, admitting they let their guard down without noticing. Suddenly, Kizara's eyes widen. She asks if the Grand Temple does not have a barrier specifically designed to stop him from escaping. Another saintess quickly replies that anyone who touches the barrier is supposed to be struck by holy magic, so she cannot understand how he managed to get through it. Looking slightly embarrassed, the knight explains that Johannes simply dug a tunnel beneath it. Kizara grits her teeth, while one of the saintesses mutters that he is probably halfway to the slums by now. Kizara nods with a grim expression. There is only one reason he would go there. They have to leave immediately, because Alm is probably relaxing in her garden, completely unaware that trouble is racing toward her. Meanwhile, Johannes dashes through the empty streets, breathing heavily with every step. He slips behind stacks of crates, presses himself against narrow alley walls, and cautiously scans his surroundings before letting out a satisfied grin. At last, he is certain no one is chasing him anymore. A wave of triumph washes over him as he quietly laughs to himself. Despite everything they tried, they still failed to stop him. His legs suddenly give out, and he nearly collapses. That ridiculous barrier was far more troublesome than he expected. Still, crawling beneath it turned out to be the perfect solution. After all, no one would ever suspect a prince of spending countless sleepless nights secretly digging an escape tunnel. His bloodshot eyes and exhausted body are proof of the effort, but none of it matters anymore. Every sacrifice is worth it because he can finally see his precious Alm again. Forcing himself back onto his feet, he keeps running while reassuring himself that she has nothing to worry about. He will bring her back soon enough. Just as he rounds the next corner, someone suddenly calls his name. Johannes freezes instantly. The color drains from his face as a man steps out with a curious smile and asks what he is doing wandering around at this hour. Johannes stares blankly until the man pats his shoulder and laughs, asking if he has really forgotten his own uncle. It is Samuel. Has it really been that long? Recognition finally dawns on Johannes. Standing before him is Prince Samuel, the king's younger brother and the former second in line to the throne. Samuel bursts into laughter, teasing that his rugged appearance must have made him difficult to recognize. Then again, it has been ages since he last visited the royal palace. Johannes hurriedly insists that is not the reason at all and awkwardly admits his uncle actually looks quite good. Samuel raises an eyebrow before a mischievous grin spreads across his face. In that case, he remarks, Johannes is the one who looks like someone who just clawed his way out of prison after digging underground. Johannes' jaw nearly hits the floor because that description is frighteningly accurate. Half joking, he asks whether his uncle can somehow read. Samuel laughs even harder, calling it an unbelievable coincidence that they run into each other here of all places. Johannes smiles awkwardly and admits it truly has been a long time. Samuel casually invites him back to his house, saying it is nothing luxurious, but he can at least offer a proper meal and a warm place to rest. Johannes immediately panics, explaining that he has something extremely important to do first. Samuel waves away the excuse without hesitation and tells him to stop being so formal because they are leaving together, whether he likes it or not. Johannes can only stare in silent horror as thoughts of Alm flood his mind. While she waits somewhere in the slums, he is about to be dragged away for tea with his uncle. Back at the Grand Temple, Kizara paces back and forth impatiently while the other saintesses urge her to wait until sunrise before setting out. She immediately shoots the idea down, demanding to know how they can even consider waiting. Alm could already be in danger. The others argue that it is the middle of the night, and the slums are far too dangerous after dark. Kizara dismisses the concern at once, reminding them they have a holy knight accompanying them. The knight lets out a quiet chuckle and says he appreciates her confidence, but recent rumors suggest they should still be careful. Every saintess immediately turns toward him and asks what he means. He explains that people have been talking about enormous tree roots running wild somewhere in the slum. Their expressions freeze in disbelief. Almost casually, he adds that there are also reports of a gigantic sand monster roaming the area. The two younger saintesses immediately begin to panic, insisting the place sounds unbelievably dangerous. Kizara can only wonder what kind of place Alm has been living in all this time. Naturally, None of them realize every one of those unbelievable rumors was caused by Alm herself. The knight then remembers one final rumor spreading through the royal palace. Apparently, the person caught in those rampaging tree roots was none other than the third prince, Wendell. The Saintesses gasp in shock. They ask if he means the prince infamous for mistreating his fiancée while openly chasing other women out of spite. The knight nods, explaining that ever since his encounter with mysterious tree monster, Wendell has changed beyond recognition. The Saintesses stare at him in complete disbelief. The knight clarifies that calling it character development would be an understatement. According to the rumors, it is as though he has become an entirely different person. Elsewhere, a man grinds his teeth in frustration. That shameless prince. He assumed Alm had merely chased him away, but he never imagined she would completely transform him. Standing outside a room, the man knocks on the door before stepping inside. He politely announces himself and asks how the prince has been feeling. Before he can finish speaking, Wendell cuts him off at once, firmly insisting that he is doing perfectly fine. Crendel freezes when he sees the prince. He's lying with his head in a girl's lap while she strokes his hair, looking completely at peace. The prince tells him he feels like he's been Crendel nearly shouts, staring at the prince's outfit. What is he even wearing? The prince doesn't understand the question. He calls it simply the clothing of true love. Crendel panics harder, asking what on earth that's supposed. The prince explains that the Saintess Alm taught him something important, something he'd been neglecting his whole life. He says he grew up never knowing a mother's love. His mother was the most beautiful woman in the kingdom, and because of that beauty, she was forced to become a royal consort. All her resentment, all these years, had been aimed at him. By the time he was old enough to understand why, despair had already swallowed him whole. He'd spent his life toying with women drawn in by the looks he inherited from her, then throwing them away, as if he were somehow getting revenge on his mother through them. Crendel's expression darkens as the prince keeps talking, and then the prince's eyes suddenly snap open, declaring that all of that is over now. Even someone as childish and immature as him could be shown the way, thanks to Alm's saintly, motherly compassion. And that was when he finally realized the one person who had truly loved him all along was standing right beside him. His fiancée, Bianca. He points at her, telling Crendel she loved him even through all his running around with other women. She never once gave up on him. He turns to her, apologizing for every terrible thing he'd put her through. She smiles gently, telling him it's fine. She accepts his flaws too. Besides, she adds, she always knew those other women would end up being nothing more than stepping stones for her. Crendel's blood runs cold. This woman is terrifying. The prince tells him that's simply how things turned out, and that Alm is an incredible woman, someone they really shouldn't be causing trouble. Crendel grinds his teeth in frustration. Then the prince turns back to Bianca, announcing that right now, the most important thing in his life is deepening the love between the two of them. Crendel backs out of the room, shutting the door behind him, unable to stomach another second of their lovey-dovey display. He can't deal with this. He clearly underestimated Saint Alm. He has no idea how she pulled it off, but somehow she turned that shameless womanizer of a prince into a man who only has eyes for his fiancée. Which means, as far as his plans go, the prince is now completely useless to him. Looks like he'll have to change his approach. If persuasion won't work, he'll just have to drag her to the castle himself. Fine. By force, then. Meanwhile, as Johannes gets dragged into a small, modest house, he looks around at the walls, realizing the place is even humbler than he expected. Does his uncle really live here? Samuel chuckles, apologizing for the state of it. He lives alone these days, he says, so he doesn't put much thought into his living arrangement. Johannes tries to protest, insisting that's not what he meant. Samuel waves it off, explaining that after losing his wife and children in a fire 10 years ago, he never really found anywhere that felt like home again. He laughs, though there's not much humor in it, and admits that's probably how he ended up dragging the mood down. Then he turns the question back on Johannes, asking what's really going on with him. He tells him to speak freely, to complain all he wants if he needs to. Johannes insists there's nothing to complain about. Samuel isn't buying it for a second, pointing out there's no way nothing involves sneaking around in the middle of the night, looking like he crawled out of a ditch. Johannes grits his teeth, admitting his uncle has a point. He might not look it right now, but he's the head priest of the Grand Temple. Even with his own uncle, he can't just casually unload his problem. Samuel looks a little puzzled, then shrugs and says he understands. In that case, he says, they might as well just enjoy the night and have a few drinks together. Just like that, Johannes ends up crying with a huge cup of juice in his tongue heavy and trembling. He explains how Alm ran away from the Grand Temple. Even though he was the first person to recognize how special she was, everyone at the temple treats him like some kind of villain, trying to stop him at every turn. A few of them have even tried to kill him. He bangs his head on the table, muttering that maybe it's already too late for him. Samuel says he thinks he understands, though he could have sworn he'd only poured the boy grape juice. He asks Johannes if this was really about using her talent for himself, and points out that now not only does everyone hate him, but the trust of his entire workplace lies in ruin. Isn't that just him reaping what he sowed? Johannes jumps up, shouting that's not it at all. Everything he's done has been for the good of the country. Her potential was going to waste. And it isn't like he was trying to keep her all to himself. Samuel studies him for a moment and says the way he's talking, it all sounds a lot like self-righteousness. But what about what she actually wanted? He put her through some brutal training regime, as he calls it, without ever explaining his real intentions to her. Isn't that just abusing his position, forcing his ideas onto someone else without asking? No wonder she hates him, no matter how noble his goal might have been. He laughs, adding that he's not trying to be harsh. He gets why the boy charged ahead the way he did. He's young, but if the people lose their trust in him, that could become a real problem for the whole country. Maybe it's time to step back and actually think about his own action. Samuel glances over and realizes Johannes has already passed out drunk. He apologizes anyway, admitting that probably sounded a bit rich coming from him. He mutters that he was simply drawn to someone with real talent, and that wanting to improve his country isn't a bad thing in itself. Johannes, barely conscious, mumbles that it's okay. Samuel looks startled, asking what he means. Johannes tells him he understands that he too is worried about the country's future, especially with his brother, the king, being practically the walking definition of arrogance. Samuel leans in and asks quietly if he even knows what he's talking about. He admits he left the castle in despair after losing his family, but knowing there are still young, stubborn, like-minded people like Johannes out there gives him some comfort. Still, he needs a better plan than sneaking around at night. If he genuinely believes he was in the wrong, he should start with a sincere apology, own his mistakes, face her with a little humility. He's sure she'll respond with the same kind of pure heart, because that's simply the kind of person a saint is. His late wife was a saint too, he says, full of compassion, someone who cared deeply for her people. Johannes asks, quietly, if he's talking about his wife. He's heard stories about her, beloved by the whole country, someone who worked tirelessly alongside Samuel for everyone's happiness. Samuel chuckles, lost for a moment in the memory. Then he shakes it off, reminding Johannes that he was supposed to be on his way to see Alm, wasn't he? So when he finally does see her, he knows exactly what he needs to do, right? Johannes nods, placing a hand over his heart, and says he needs to apologize to her, sincerely, from the bottom of his heart, for absolutely everything he's put her through. Samuel tells him that's the spirit, wishing him good luck. He suggests Johannes get some sleep and head out in the morning, though he warns the bed might not exactly meet royal standard. Morning arrives just like that. Sunlight spills across the faces of the three saintesses. Kizara groans, realizing that after everything, morning has already come. One of the others says it's a relief nothing bad happened, but Kizara immediately snaps to attention, demanding to know where on earth Alm is. They all exhale together, realizing the prince is nowhere to be found either. Kizara starts to panic, wondering if the rumor about him wandering the slums was bad information from the start. Just then, a strange noise catches her ear. Meanwhile, Alm stands outside her little shop, announcing through a megaphone that the morning sales are wrapping up and everyone should come back in the afternoon for more. As the crowd thins out and disperses, she lets out a relieved sigh alongside the two boys who've been helping her all morning. She turns to them, apologizing for roping them in on such short notice. They laugh it off, telling her not to worry about it at all. The older one says they're just happy to help. The younger one, practically bouncing, adds that since everything's been selling so well, it's actually been a lot of fun too. Alm smiles, though she can't quite place what's supposed to be fun about it. She realizes she never really had the time or the luxury to think about work that way before. She used to believe work was only ever exhausting and difficult, that it simply came with being a saint. As she hands over another box to the boys, she chuckles to herself, thinking the saintesses back at the temple would probably scold her for even saying that out loud. That's when Kizara's voice cuts through the air. They've finally found her, so this is where she's been hiding. Alm spins around, panic flooding her face. The two little boys just look on, confused. Kizara comes rushing over, asking if she has any idea how hard it's been to track her down. The other two saintesses stare, stunned to see Alm living somewhere like this, having not laid eyes on her in ages. Alm panics further, quickly swapping into her old saintess outfit, unsure what to even say. She assumes they've come to drag her back. She figures she deserves it, disappearing without a word like that, causing them all this trouble, running off to laze about her days while they were left behind. Her eyes start to well up. If she had a choice, she doesn't want to give up this life. Then Kazara steps forward and wraps her in a hug, telling her how relieved she is to see her doing well. They'd all been so worried. Alm blinks in confusion, asking if they aren't angry with her for leaving without a word. Kazara looks genuinely baffled, asking why on earth they'd be angry. One of the others laughs, saying if anything, they're the ones who owe her an apology. Another adds that they couldn't do a thing to help while she was still there, even though they knew she was suffering. Alm is still lost, until the saintess with the short hair admits, a little sheepishly, that they honestly weren't sure showing up to find her wouldn't just be a bother. Kazara jumps in, explaining that the bug got loose, so they couldn't just sit around waiting any longer, they had to come find her. Alm has no idea what bug they're talking about, until the younger boy pipes up, asking if they're out hunting insects. His older brother tells him to hush. Kazara glances at the boys and asks Alm who they are. Alm explains they've been helping her out since she arrived in the slum. The boys introduce themselves as Domi and Hindo. Kazara looks at them fondly, remarking how adorable they are, then asks Alm if that means she's staying at their place. Alm hesitates before saying no. The boys quickly clarify that she's actually living in the park. The saintesses freeze in horror. Alm leads them over to the park. They stare at it, unable to believe she's actually been living somewhere like this. She assures them it's surprisingly comfortable, which only makes Kazara angrier. She insists this is unacceptable, offering Alm a room in her family's mansion for as long as she wants it. Alm just laughs, which only fuels Kazara's frustration. Alm tells her she appreciates the concern, but she's genuinely happy here. She really does love this place. The saintesses exchange a look, realizing she's doing it again, brushing off every chance they give her to actually help. Then Alm asks what brought them here in the place. The question seems to jolt Kazara back to the point. Right? She says, they need to be careful. He, meaning the prince, broke out of the grand temple to come find her. Before she can finish the warning, heavy footsteps approach. The prince himself, looking utterly exhausted, calls out Alm's name, declaring he's finally found her hideout. The saintesses go rigid with fury, stunned that he actually managed to crawl his way through the barrier. It's extermination time. They shout at Alm to hide immediately, while the prince just stands there, thoroughly confused by the sudden hostility. He ignores them completely and walks right past them. He apologizes, saying he does not have time to deal with them right now. He only comes here to apologize to Alm. Kazara frowns and questions him. He has acted arrogant for as long as she can remember, so why does he suddenly want to apologize now? He lets out a bitter laugh and admits she is right. Until now, he has only thought about himself. Because of that, he has hurt Alm again and again. It is only natural that she leaves the Grand Temple. He remembers his uncle's advice to admit his mistakes and apologize sincerely. That is why he truly wants to say he is sorry. He bows and apologizes. However, the moment he raises his head, he freezes. A huge, spiky ball stands in front of him. From inside, Alm shouts that he should not come any closer. Her words pierce his heart like a knife. The saints on the balcony burst into laughter. They wonder if the prince has just been rejected. They tease that he deserves it. After everything he has done, Alm does not even want to see the power-hungry prince anymore. Kazara smirks and asks if he finally understands how it feels. She adds that apologizing while expecting instant forgiveness is far too convenient. Then she turns toward Alm and apologizes, saying they will move the prince out of the way because he is ruining the view. The prince's eyes fill with tears. He wonders if his apology has failed, but he refuses to give up. He begs for one more chance and pleads with them to let him try again. The royal knights quickly hold him back. He desperately calls out to Alm, asking her to listen to him. The other saints finally lose their patience. They tell him to stop already. If Alm does not like him, then he needs to accept it. Just then, several boys arrive with a large group of villagers. They point at the prince and shout that he is the suspicious man who has been asking everyone where Alm lives. The prince panics as he recognizes the same villagers who gave him directions earlier. He hurriedly tells Alm not to worry because he only wants to speak with her face to face. The villagers are not convinced. They yell that he is exactly the kind of suspicious person they have been worried about. Before long, they start throwing stones at him. The prince begs them to stop and asks the saints to help him. Instead, Kizara runs toward the villagers and cheerfully asks if they can give her a few rocks as well. He cries out, begging her not to join them. With nowhere left to escape, the prince has no choice but to run away. As he flees, he shouts that they dare disrespect a prince and promises that he will return. The villagers stare at each other in surprise. They wonder if he really says he is a prince, because that cannot possibly be true. One of the boys proudly announces that they have chased the suspicious man away. The saints thank the villagers for their help and praise them for protecting Alm. The villagers laugh and reply that the saints do a great job as well. Kizara smiles and says it is comforting to know such dependable people live here. The villagers promise to keep looking after Alm. Once everyone leaves, the saints walk over to the giant spiky ball. They tell Alm it is probably time for them to head home too, but they promise to visit her again soon. After they leave, Alm finally sighs in relief and returns to her normal appearance. She admits that her heart nearly bursts from anxiety because she ends up seeing someone she never wants to meet again. She lightly taps her head and reminds herself that he is gone now, so she just needs to forget about him. When she steps out of the spiky ball, she realizes everyone has already left. She quietly wonders if she loses track of time while hiding inside because she completely shuts herself off from the outside world. In the end, she decides that a good night's sleep will help her forget everything. Meanwhile, back at his uncle's house, the prince panics as he realizes how badly he has failed. He tells his uncle that Alm truly rejects him and even warns him not to come anywhere near her. His uncle calmly tells him to settle down. He cannot blame Alm for reacting that way. She clearly does not like him, so perhaps he should leave her alone. He also tells the prince to stop acting like a lovesick schoolboy. The prince stares at him in disbelief. His uncle chuckles and asks why he looks so shocked. Furious, the prince points at him and insists that this has nothing to do with love. He claims it is all for the sake of his ambition. He raises his voice as he argues with his uncle. Meanwhile, Alm sleeps peacefully, completely unaware that the monster chasing her is slowly transforming into something even more frightening. She has no idea what is waiting for her next. Somewhere else, a man is deep into his gym routine when he suddenly bursts out laughing, muttering that he's finally figured it out. A saint is rejecting princes one after another, and that jaw-dropping transformation in the first prince, that was her doing too. His companion nods, pointing out that the only one left with any real chance of measuring up to her now is... Surely he's been itching for a worthy opponent, hasn't he? The prince's eyes light up with genuine delight. Fascinating, he says. She's already taken down the first prince and the fifth, and apparently has some tangled history with the seventh as well. He likes her spirit. He lets out a booming shout, declaring that a challenge is clearly in order, and that he, Gardner, will answer it with pure muscle. He takes off running in excitement, insisting they need to settle once and for all whose physique reigns supreme. His companion just chuckles, thinking there's truly no escape left for Alm now. Does she really believe she can outmatch this walking mountain of a prince? Meanwhile, Alm is savoring her tea beneath a shady tree when a sneeze catches her off. Guard. She figures it must be allergies, since her nose has been irritatingly itchy lately, almost as though something's drifting over from the center of the capital. Her throat feels scratchy, her nose keeps twitching, though she's starting to suspect it isn't pollen at all. Another sneeze hits her, and she suddenly realizes her barrier's filtering setting has been cranked far too high. She sighs, exasperated, wishing people would simply leave her be. The moment she finally carves out a little piece, something always comes along to ruin it. Just then, the younger boy pipes up, relieved to see she looks fine now. She jumps, startled enough that her tea slips from her hand entirely. She spins toward them, flustered, asking when exactly they'd appear. They apologize, explaining they'd simply been worried, since she'd been shut away behind that barrier for a while, looking rather withdrawn. Afterward, she joins them to help with the shop, apologizing again for constantly roping them into her work. They reassure her it's no trouble at all, insisting they're the ones who still owe her plenty. The older brother adds that, honestly, they're both quite used to this kind of labor. She tilts her head, curious what he means. He explains that, believe it or not, the two of them have taken on all sorts of odd jobs over the younger one chimes in cheerfully that it's just been him and his brother managing on their own. Her expression falters. Just the two of them? Where are their parents? They shrug it off, laughing lightly admitting they honestly don't know. The slums are the only home they've ever really known, so maybe their parents simply left them here at some. Who's to say? Either way, they consider everyone in the slums their family. She studies them for a moment, struck by how resilient they are, and tells them, sincerely, that they're incredible. They exchange a puzzled glance, wondering if she genuinely means it. Then the older brother shifts the subject, asking, almost offhandedly, whether she ever plans on going back. A visible shiver runs through her. He presses gently, saying they've both been concerned and think she should probably return before too long. She asks if he means Lady Kazara and the others. That's when the memory surfaces, Kazara's voice from earlier, demanding to know what she thought she was doing, living somewhere like this. It's far too dangerous for a young woman to be living alone in a park tucked inside the slum. She has somewhere to go. She's a saintess, so why not simply return to her family's estate? Here, after all, she has no bath, no proper toilet, no walls, no roof, nothing shielding her from the element. They genuinely can't understand how she still seems so content. She laughs softly at the memory, wondering what she's even supposed to do with all that. Kazara clearly thinks she's lost her mind, but she isn't entirely wrong either. Does have somewhere she could call home. She simply can't bring herself to return to that estate, because it stopped being where she belongs a long time ago. Which is exactly why this little park, run down and modest as it is, has become her home instead. And if even this doesn't work out for her, then maybe she's simply someone who was never meant to have a place to belong. The boys watch her, clearly confused, but before either can ask anything further, she snaps back into focus, urging them to hurry and get everything ready. Any more dawdling, she warns, and customers will already be lined up waiting for their vegetables. Left with no real opening to push the matter further, the boys simply tell her it's fine. For Alm, there's no place in the world better than this. Life here is peaceful, her little shop is thriving, she can enjoy tea whenever she wants, and no one stops her from taking after naps. To her, this tiny corner of the slums feels like paradise. Just as she settles into another relaxing day, someone suddenly stomps the ground in shock, shouting and asking what on earth that thing in the sky is. The entire marketplace instantly falls silent as everyone looks up. A horse carriage is floating through the air, leaving the crowd completely baffled. Another villager points upward and shouts that it is not floating by itself. Someone is actually carrying it, and whoever it is heading straight toward them. Moments later, the second prince lands in the middle of the market, breathing heavily but wearing a proud grin. He spreads his arms wide and asks everyone what they think of such a magnificent sight. A horse carriage carrying passengers while he carries the entire horse carriage. He proudly declares that they have just witnessed the true power of muscles. Every jaw drops in disbelief. He gently lowers the carriage to the ground, only for the elderly passengers inside to immediately scold him, asking how many times they have told him to stop carrying carriages around like luggage. He simply laughs, telling them to loosen up because carriages are obviously meant to be bench-pressed, not ridden. Flexing his massive bicep, he proudly asks everyone to admire these magnificent muscles instead. One of the villagers cautiously steps forward and bluntly admits that nobody has the slightest idea who he is. More importantly, what exactly is he doing here? The prince pauses before nodding thoughtfully. Fair enough. Straightening his posture, he proudly introduces himself as the royal gardener and the second prince of the Shashtal kingdom. The reason he has come today is simple. He wishes to challenge the famous saintess Alm to an honorable duel. Alm's eyes widen in horror as she quickly pushes through the crowd and asks if he is seriously talking about fighting her. The prince studies her carefully before confidently declaring that she must be the legendary Alm. It seems fate has guided his muscles to her at last. As he strikes another dramatic pose, his shirt suddenly tears apart with a loud rip. Alm nearly faints on the spot, looking as though her soul briefly leaves her body. The prince merely laughs, cheerfully remarking that he has ripped another shirt again. His elderly caretaker immediately yells at him to put his clothes back on. With a casual shrug, he slips on another shirt and turns back to Alm, asking what kind of battle she would prefer. Trembling nervously, Alm quietly suggests perhaps a game of old maid. The prince blinks in confusion before staring at her once more. He asks if she truly is the legendary saint who supposedly defeated the second prince, secretly trained in a neighborhood park, and challenged princes one after another. Alm immediately shouts that none of that is true and demands to know who has been spreading such ridiculous stories. Completely confused now, the prince asks why she is even standing here if none of it is true. The villagers finally lose their patience and loudly tell him to stop bothering Lady Alm. They add that they do not care if he is royalty. If he keeps causing trouble, they will not stand by and watch. The prince scratches his head, admitting there must have been a misunderstanding somewhere. Then he casually looks around and remarks that everyone here seems terribly lacking in muscle. He even wonders aloud if they have ever eaten meat properly before. The crowd instantly erupts in outrage. Several villagers angrily point out that unlike nobles, they cannot afford meat whenever they please. The prince is left speechless as one furious villager effortlessly wrestles several men to the ground by himself. His eyes nearly pop out as he asks if these people truly survive without eating. Even Alm stares in surprise at the unexpected display of strength. Just then, an elderly woman steps forward with a gentle smile and calmly explains that the prince clearly has no idea what life in the slums is really like. This is a place where hungry people gather, where many struggle just to survive, and where there were times they could not even find clean drinking. Through all those hardships, the one person who never abandoned them was Lady Alm. The prince slowly turns toward the little vegetable shop and asks if every single vegetable there was really grown by Alm herself. Flustered, Alm laughs shyly and admits that they were. The younger boy eagerly jumps in, proudly declaring that every vegetable Lady Alm grows tastes amazing. His older brother quickly adds that her fruit is just as incredible and confidently promises the prince has never tasted anything like it. Curious, the prince accepts a tomato from the younger. He admits he has never been fond of vegetables, but since they are recommending it so confidently, he decides to give it a chance. The younger boy simply grins and tells him to take one bite. The prince bites into the tomato and instantly freezes. His eyes widen in disbelief as he pounds his chest, shouting about the unbelievable sweetness, the rich juice bursting with every bite, and the incredible freshness filling his mouth. He declares that he has never eaten a vegetable this delicious in his entire life. Overcome with excitement, he accidentally tears his shirt apart yet again before eagerly asking if Alm truly grew it herself. Still laughing awkwardly, Alm smiles and confirms that she certainly. The second prince suddenly shouts that he admits total defeat. Startled, Alm asks what he means. He tells her, quite seriously, that this is his utter loss, that her words have genuinely moved him. At the same time, he admits his own ignorance has left him thoroughly humiliated. He clenches his fist, grinding his teeth in quiet frustration, wondering aloud how he, a prince of this very country, could have remained so blind to the suffering faced by its poorer districts. Turning to the villagers, he offers a sincere, heartfelt apology to everyone gathered. He goes on to declare that his true dream for the kingdom is for every citizen to become healthy and strong, both in body and mind, insisting that muscle alone can solve virtually any problem. Sharing in the glory of physical strength, he proclaims, is the incredible future he envisions for them all. Fired up, he shouts that he will personally eradicate hunger from the nation. No one, he insists, should have to struggle to survive. Everyone deserves to live freely, growing equally as muscular as he. He vows to transform this land into a true nation of muscle, giving himself exactly 3 years to accomplish it. With that, he hoists the carriage back onto his shoulders and takes off running, shouting that they'll all build muscle together as one people. The villagers stand frozen, utterly speechless, unable to process what just happened or what any of it actually meant. It's also becoming clear that he originally came here specifically to see Alm. Feeling everyone's curious eyes shift toward her, Alm bolts, vaulting cleanly over a nearby fence, announcing loudly that it's closing time and she needs to shut the shop immediately. One of the villagers watches her flee, wondering aloud if she's really just going to pretend none of this happened. Meanwhile, back within the palace, the Prime Minister lets out a furious shout, realizing the scheme has failed just like the last. First, he'd sent that muscle-brained fool of a gardener to challenge Alm directly, expecting the constant clashes to slowly draw the two of them closer together, with himself quietly cheering from the shadows the entire time. Before long, he'd imagined, they would marry and rise together as the next king and queen, leaving him, the one who orchestrated their union, with unmatched influence behind the throne. He'd pictured himself pulling the strings indefinitely while they lived out some ridiculous happy ending. Grinding his teeth, he mutters that the plan should have been foolproof. Yet somehow, the gardener prince had been completely swayed by Alm instead, in a direction he never anticipated. He's practically on the verge of tears when the prince himself strides in, and the Prime Minister perks up immediately, eager to ask how the intense battle with Alm went. The prince waves the question off entirely, instead dropping a thick stack of papers onto the table and asking him to take a look. Confused, the prime minister flips through the documents, realizing they outline a detailed proposal for food distribution to citizens, along with a full regeneration plan for the slum district. Bewildered, he asks the prince what exactly this is, demanding to know if someone put him up to it. The prince simply sighs, admitting he wrote every word himself. His eyes light up as he asks the prime minister to flag any concerns he might have, adding that he genuinely welcomed them. His mind, he explains, is already made up. He intends to fix the poverty crisis crippling their country within the next 3 years. Stunned, the prime minister sputters in frustration, demanding to know where the sudden change came from and what exactly happened with Alm. The prince breaks into laughter, praising her as an extraordinary woman, admitting she opened his eyes to issues plaguing their country that he'd never properly considered before. Baffled, the prime minister can only wonder what on earth transpired between them. Days later, the prime minister watches in disbelief as the gardener prince continues tackling poverty with genuine seriousness, behaving like an entirely different person altogether. The man who used to care about nothing beyond his own training regimen is now plastering reform posters across the entire castle. The prime minister mutters, utterly baffled by this sudden burst of enthusiasm, noting that it mirrors exactly what happened previously with the first prince. He wonders, half serious, if this saintess possesses some kind of mind-altering magic capable of rewriting personalities entirely. He'd originally assumed the second prince made a solid backup option, strong, bold, outgoing, easy enough to work with. That leaves precious few alternatives among the remaining princes. The third prince is far too sedentary and overweight to be of any use. The fourth prince refuses to leave his room under any circumstance. The fifth and seventh princes are both entirely out of the question for his purpose, which leaves only the strange, unreadable sixth prince, the one who wanders the kingdom without any clear pattern or purpose. Elsewhere, Alm sneezes repeatedly, wondering aloud why her nose keeps itching so persistently today. She decides a walk might help clear her. As she strolls along, she can already imagine the scolding she'll receive later for wandering off again. Glancing around, she reassures herself that this area really isn't all that dangerous after all. Little does she realize just how mistaken that assumption is. While plenty of kind, respectful people live throughout the slums, there's an equally significant population of dangerous individuals who resort to theft and violence without a second thought. Over time, without fully realizing it, Alm had been quietly resolving countless disputes and conflicts herself. Eventually, the area surrounding her park earned a distinct reputation. Anyone causing trouble nearby would get swiftly dealt with. She became something of a local legend among the more dangerous residents, feared just enough that the neighborhood around her park grew remarkably peaceful. At least, that's how things had been. But as she strolls along, humming quietly to herself, the older of the two brothers comes rushing toward her in a panic, shouting for her help. Confused, she turns toward him, asking what on earth is wrong. Alm looks up in alarm as Hindo comes sprinting toward her, breathing so hard he can barely catch his breath. The moment he stops in front of her, she quickly asks if he is all right and what could possibly scare him this much. Between heavy breaths, Hindo explains that he is simply walking home from work when, out of nowhere, a strange old man starts chasing him. Alm blinks in confusion, wondering what kind of old man he is talking about. Before Hindo can answer, a voice suddenly calls out from behind them. The stranger complains that he should wait a second because he is not just some creepy old man. Alm immediately turns toward him in surprise. The man casually explains that he only wants to get a proper look at the boy's face. Instead of feeling reassured, Alm becomes even more suspicious. She quietly tells Domi to stay behind her before stepping forward herself. Without wasting another second, she lifts the stranger into the air with magic and flings him across the area. The man flips gracefully before landing on his feet. Clicking his tongue, he complains that her welcome is unbelievably rude. Does she always send people flying the first time they meet? He removes his cap with an annoyed sigh and proudly declares that he is not an old man at all. He is only 60 years old. Domi leans toward Alm and whispers that throwing him somehow does not seem to work. Alm whispers back that perhaps she simply needs to throw him even harder next time. Hearing that, the stranger immediately protests and begs her to stop discussing ways to launch him. More importantly, he asks if she is a saintess. Alm's heartbeat instantly skips as she nervously asks how he knows that. The man explains that rumors have spread throughout the capital about a saintess secretly helping the people living in the slum. Since all saintesses are supposed to be serving the princes, he finds her presence here rather unusual. The moment he mentions the princes, Alm instinctively takes a small step back. She cautiously asks if he knows them. The man notices her reaction and suddenly bursts into laughter. He cheerfully remarks that her expression says everything. She clearly cannot stand that prince. Calling him an unbelievably annoying pest, he laughs and says he finally understands why she chooses to hide here. He reassures her that she has absolutely nothing to fear while he is around. Hindo immediately points at him and blurts out that he is lying because he has been chasing him through the slums the entire time. Before anyone can continue, Alm suddenly flinches. The familiar tickle returns to her nose. At the same time, Domi steps in front of her and firmly warns the stranger not to come any closer to Lady. The man scratches his head with an awkward smile and admits that he gets a little carried away earlier. His curiosity quickly takes over again as he suggests moving somewhere brighter so he can finally get a proper look at Hindo's face. While they are at it, he would also like to know the boy's name and even his birthday. Hindo immediately hides behind Alm and whispers that he knows it. This man is definitely a complete weirdo. Feeling increasingly uneasy, Alm asks why he is so determined to see the child's face. The stranger pauses for a moment before deciding that he should explain everything from the beginning. Wearing a confident grin, he tells them to prepare to be amazed because the reason he wants to see the boys' faces, unfortunately for him, Alm's nose reaches its limit first. She lets out an explosive sneeze that sends the man soaring straight into the sky. Everyone watches in stunned silence as he disappears into the distance. His furious voice echoes from above, shouting that he is literally about to explain everything before vanishing beyond the clouds like a tiny shooting star. Alm immediately turns to Hindo with an embarrassed smile and apologizes for such an unladylike sneeze. Hindo simply laughs and tells her not to worry about it. Relieved, Alm smiles back. Hindo notices her rubbing her nose and asks if she is coming down with a cold. She gently shakes her head and assures him that she already feels perfectly fine. Now that she thinks about it, the irritating tickle in her nose disappears the instant she launches that strange man away. Even the scratchiness in her throat is completely gone. She cannot help wondering if the man himself somehow causes all those strange symptoms. Meanwhile, the unfortunate stranger crashes into the ground somewhere far away. He slowly pulls himself out of the cloud of dust while grumbling that the saintess really does not believe in holding back. He always assumes saintesses are supposed to represent kindness, compassion, and restraint, who attack someone before they even finish explaining themselves. Even so, he has to admit that she is far stronger than he expects. His expression gradually turns serious as he realizes her violent sneeze is probably a reaction to the miasma surrounding him. Letting out a quiet sigh, he admits that things come dangerously close to ruining everything. Had the situation gone any worse, his entire plan might have fallen apart. Even so, Hindo continues to capture his interest, so perhaps postponing his experiment in the slums is the wiser choice. A sly smile slowly spreads across his face as he quietly promises himself that one day he will repay Alm for sending him. Not long afterward, Hindo excitedly runs through the slums, proudly telling everyone how Lady Alm saves him with nothing but an unbelievably powerful sneeze. The villagers listen with wide eyes and complete disbelief, while Alm chases after him with a bright red face, desperately begging him to stop telling everyone. As Johannes walks alone through the palace corridors with his head lowered, memories of his recent conversation with his uncle resurface. Back then, he breaks down in tears and tells his uncle that Alm rejects him completely. She even tells him to stay away from her. His uncle simply stares at him before asking him to calm down. Shaking his head, he remarks that Johannes is acting like a lovesick teenager and cannot understand why he is taking the rejection so personally. Johannes' face immediately turns red. He points at his uncle and insists that he has it all wrong. He is not in love with Alm. Absolutely not. Snapping back to the present, Johannes keeps walking with a gloomy expression. His face is still flushed with embarrassment as he tries to convince himself that this is not love. What he truly wants are Alm's abilities. That is all. Or at least that is what he keeps telling himself. Yet deep down, he quietly admits that, more than anything else, he simply wants her to remain by his side. Just then, Kazara and the other saintesses spot him while heading to work. The moment Kazara sees him, her expression darkens. She angrily calls him a piece of trash and reminds him that they already warned him to stay away. Before he can respond, the saintesses bombard him with magic until his face is bruised and both of his eyes become swollen. Afterward, Kazara drags him onto the rooftop and bluntly tells him that he spends years abusing his authority to bully Alm, yet now he acts like nothing more than a creepy man with a one-sided crush. The other saintesses stare at him in disgust, wondering how someone can possibly be this shameless. Johannes immediately protests, insisting that he does not like Alm in that way. One of the saintesses suddenly announces that she accidentally drops an adorable picture of Alm. Without thinking for even a second, Johannes instantly dives onto the floor and frantically searches for it. The saintesses immediately jump on him again, shouting that they know the truth now. He is completely obsessed with her and hopelessly delusional. They ask whether he even understands how much Alm suffers because of everything he puts her through. Johannes desperately begs them to listen. He insists that he has been sincerely reflecting on his mistakes. He swears he is telling the truth. That is exactly why he goes to see Alm the other day to apologize, but she refuses to meet him. One of the saintesses coldly replies that he simply gets what he deserved. At least now there is no more confusion. Alm truly despises him, and if he genuinely cares about her, the kindest thing he can do is stay away from her forever. Johannes immediately shakes his head and blurts out that he cannot do that. The saintesses finally lose what little patience they have left. Grabbing him by the collar, they demand to know whether he has been listening at all. Alm hates him. He needs to accept reality and leave her alone. Fighting back tears, Johannes admits that he knows Alm hates. He knows it is entirely his fault. Even so, he cannot bear the thought that his apology never reaches her. Kazara clenches her fists in frustration as one of the other saintesses quietly whispers that the situation is even worse than they imagine. Kazara reluctantly agrees, realizing Johannes is already unstable to begin with, and this rejection only twists him into something even worse. Overwhelmed with despair, Johannes repeatedly bangs his forehead against the wall, muttering that facing Alm only to be rejected again is far too terrifying. Watching the scene unfold, Kazara quietly wonders if putting him out of his misery right now might actually be the better option. Suddenly, Johannes spins around with desperate eyes and begs them to help him reconcile with Alm. The request leaves every saintess speechless. A moment later, they grab him, throw him straight out of the temple, and seal the entrance behind him. 1 week later, the saintesses notice that Johannes has completely disappeared from the temple. One of them mentions that he locks himself inside his room every day, constantly mumbling that his life is over. Hearing that, Kazara pauses for a moment. Another saintess quietly adds that, for the first time, he actually seems genuinely worried about something. Kazara cannot help wondering if perhaps they go a little too far with their punishment. A royal knight calmly reassures her not to worry, because the young prince is tougher than he looks. Kazara sighs before asking what truly concerns him. The knight answers that his biggest worry is the fact that Johannes develops these unnecessary feelings for Lady Alm in the first place. He only hopes the prince is not planning something reckless. Meanwhile, inside his room, Johannes grits his teeth in frustration. He mutters that he shows humility, sincerely reflects on his mistakes, and even tries to apologize, yet this is the treatment he receives in return. Under normal circumstances, he would never tolerate such humiliation, but for Alm's sake, he decides to be the bigger person. Holding a pair of scissors in one hand and a knife in the other, he quietly finishes what he is working on before staring at it with satisfaction and muttering that it is finally done. Johannes quietly giggles to himself, realizing that if those three saintesses refuse to help him, then he will simply have to handle everything on his own. After all, he already gathers all the information At first, he considers writing Alm a heartfelt apology letter, but he quickly dismisses the idea. A boring letter could never fully express his feeling. Instead, he decides that the perfect gift would speak far louder than words. He eagerly imagines the delighted smile on Alm's face as she opens it. Hopefully, she will find it adorable. After spending an entire week without proper sleep, he proudly completes the ultimate symbol of his affection, a handmade teddy bear that looks exactly like him. As if that is not enough, it even comes with a talking function and a vibration mode. In Johannes' eyes, it is nothing short of a masterpiece. Unfortunately, he is also a 16-year-old boy, blessed with some of the worst taste imaginable. Thus, the true nightmare quietly begins. Hugging his blanket tightly, Johannes tosses and turns in bed, too excited to sleep. He happily decides that first thing tomorrow morning, he will march straight into the slums and personally deliver his gift. Now that those 3 troublesome saintesses finally let their guard down, nothing can stop him. The next morning, Johannes suddenly wakes with a loud yawn before his eyes shoot wide open in horror. He oversleeps on the very day the farm shop opens. Realizing he is already late, he hurriedly rushes out. At the same time, Alm finishes loading her produce onto the cart and hurries toward the vegetable stand, hoping the customers are not already waiting for her. However, the moment she arrives, she finds Hindo and Domi standing completely frozen while staring at something on the... Curious, she walks over and asks what is wrong. From a nearby hiding place, Johannes secretly watches the scene unfold. Deep down, he wishes he could hand the gift to Alm himself, but the mere thought of being rejected face to face is enough to make his heart stop. For now, secretly watching her joyful reaction should be more than enough. Unfortunately, before he can enjoy the moment, one of the villagers suddenly notices him hiding nearby. The crowd immediately points at him, wondering why that suspicious man is sneaking around again. Johannes instantly panics. The villagers quickly recognize him as the same suspicious stranger from before, forcing him to flee before they can catch him. Meanwhile, Domi quietly asks Alm to look at the strange object lying in front of the shop. He explains that it is already there when they arrive. The moment Alm lays eyes on it, her entire body shivers. She stares at the unsettling doll before repeatedly shaking her head in horror. She cannot even begin to understand what kind of terrifying object it is. The brothers simply shrug and explain that they have no idea where it comes from either. It is already waiting for them when they open the shop. Alm nervously blurts out that whoever leaves something this horrifying behind must have terrible taste. Just then, another man approaches the stall and calmly asks what all the commotion is about. He also wonders how business has been lately. Alm looks up, only to freeze in surprise. She immediately rushes toward him and desperately asks him not to tell her that the strange doll is somehow his doing because she already rejects every gift he sends. The man blinks in confusion and admits that he has absolutely no idea what she is talking about. He simply comes to express his gratitude. His unexpected answer leaves Alm completely puzzled. He explains that he wants to thank her for changing both the first and the second princess. Alm stares at him in confusion as he continues. She manages to reform 2 incredibly stubborn princes with remarkable ease. The womanizing first prince abandons his reckless lifestyle, turns over a new leaf, and becomes completely devoted to his fiancée. Meanwhile, the muscle-obsessed second prince, who once cares about nothing except training, is now sincerely studying social welfare and economics. To be honest, he finds the transformation astonishing. He even begins to wonder if Alm possesses the ability to purify people's hearts. Hearing that, Hindo and Domi excitedly nod and proudly tell her that they already say she is amazing. Embarrassed, Alm quickly denies everything and insists there must be some misunderstanding. The man simply smiles and tells her there is no need to be modest because both princes are genuinely grateful to her. Alm can only stare at him in complete confusion, wondering why any of this is happening. After a brief silence, the man glances around the slums before gently asking why she chooses to live in a place like this. Alm quietly lowers her gaze and admits that she no longer has a home to return to. The estate where she once lives is no longer where she belongs. The man nods with understanding before making her an unexpected proposal. If she is willing, he would like her to move into the royal palace instead. Alm's eyes widen in complete shock. Meanwhile, Johannes finally slows down after escaping the villager. Catching his breath, he chuckles to himself, convinced that he is finally safe. Now he can quietly observe Alm admiring his masterpiece from a distance. However, the moment he secretly peeks back toward the shop, the smile instantly disappears from his face. Standing beside Alm is none other than Prince Lionel. Lionel calmly admits that one of his bad habits is explaining things too quickly after leaving Boost. This time, however, he wants to be completely straightforward. If Alm truly has nowhere else to go, he will gladly prepare a room for her in the royal palace. More importantly, he hopes that one day she will become his princess. The words hit Johannes like a bolt of lightning. His glasses crack from the sheer shock, and he stands completely frozen with his mouth hanging open, unable to believe what he has just heard. Alm is left completely speechless. Before she can even process Lionel's words, Hindo excitedly jumps toward him and asks if he really wants to make Lady Alm his princess. Does that mean he wants to marry her? Hidden nearby, Johannes nearly faints on the spot. He cannot believe what he has just heard. Lionel quickly admits that he realizes he is moving far too fast, but he is completely serious. From the bottom of his heart, he wants Alm to stand beside him so they can build a better future for the kingdom. He sincerely believes she is an extraordinary woman and is certain she would one day become a wonderful queen and the mother of a prince worthy of inheriting the nation. Alm's face instantly turns bright red. Without thinking, she grabs the creepy doll and hurls it straight at Lionel's face, shouting at him to stop saying such outrageous things. She blurts out that although she is a former saintess, she is still only 15 years old. She cannot stand people who have absolutely no sense of tact. The moment the words leave her mouth, she freezes, realizing she loses her composure once. Watching everything from afar, Johannes is completely dumbfounded. He cannot believe Alm sends Lionel flying together with the masterpiece he spends an entire week making. Then another thought suddenly crosses his mind. Why does Alm look so flustered? Why is she blushing so much? His eyes widen in horror as his imagination runs wild. Maybe he misunderstands everything. Perhaps Lionel is not knocked away by Alm at all. Maybe the doll simply hits him so hard that it sends him. That would perfectly explain why Alm is blushing. To Johannes, there is only one possible conclusion. Alm accepts Lionel's proposal by giving him the handmade doll. Tears immediately well up in his eyes as he stumbles away in despair, convinced that the girl he falls for chooses someone else. Hindo and Domi hear a strange cry echoing from the distance and exchange puzzled glances, wondering if they just hear someone sobbing. Not long afterward, Johannes returns to the temple and clings to one of the pillars while crying uncontrollably. Kizara watches him from a distance and sighs, realizing he has been like this ever since he leaves his. The other saintesses quietly wonder if he has finally lost his mind. Between sniffles, Johannes keeps mumbling for Alm to. Just then, a royal knight approaches and informs him that someone has come to see him. Johannes blankly asks who would possibly want to meet. He suddenly blurts out that it does not matter anymore because Alm chooses Prince Lionel instead of him. The knight calmly replies that, speaking of Prince Lionel, he is actually the visitor waiting outside. Johannes freezes in disbelief as the knight adds that the prince wishes to discuss that very matter. A short while later, Johannes reluctantly meets Lionel. Lionel politely apologizes for dropping by without notice. Still feeling dazed, Johannes tells him it is not a problem and asks what he wants to discuss. Lionel falls strangely silent. The awkward pause leaves both of them staring at each other in confusion. Johannes finally asks if something is wrong, because Lionel looks exhausted. At the same time, Johannes grumbles inwardly that Lionel has no right looking so miserable after confessing to all. Lionel suddenly points out that Johannes does not look any better. Letting out a weary sigh, Johannes admits that Alm rejects Lionel without hesitation. He gestures toward a chair and invites him to sit down before asking if that rejection is what he wants to discuss. Lionel takes a sip of tea, only to immediately spit it back out in shock. He asks Johannes to wait a moment. How does he even arrive at that conclusion? Johannes awkwardly explains that Lionel says he wants to discuss that matter, so he naturally assumes he means the confession. Lionel shakes his head and clarifies that he is actually talking about the miasma. Johannes blinks in surprise as the memory finally returns. Lionel narrows his eyes and remarks that Johannes clearly forgets about it. Flustered, Johannes quickly insists that he remembers perfectly well. Someone in the kingdom is secretly gathering enormous amounts of miasma. Lionel nods and explains that, although he investigates the matter himself, there is only so much he can accomplish alone. That is why he comes to ask Johannes for help. After a brief pause, Lionel quietly admits that something continues to bother him. No matter how much he thinks about it, he cannot shake the feeling that whoever is collecting the miasma must have an accomplice inside the royal castle. Johannes immediately asks if he really believes someone within the palace is involved. Lionel calmly explains his reasoning. First, it would be nearly impossible for a single, ordinary person to gather such an enormous amount of miasma without attracting attention. Second, someone must have a purpose for collecting it all. The kingdom is currently ruled by a suspicious king surrounded by influential nobles. Naturally, many factions have reasons to oppose them and try to bring them down. Johannes quietly asks if Lionel believes those groups are responsible. Lionel slowly shakes his head. He cannot say for certain who is behind it, but he is convinced that someone, somewhere, is preparing for something far bigger. With another sigh, he admits that finding trustworthy allies is becoming increasingly difficult because he no longer knows who he can truly rely on. Johannes freezes as Lionel's words hit him like a bolt of lightning. His thoughts immediately spiral out of control. He convinces himself that Lionel plans to ask Alm for help with the investigation and use that opportunity to grow even closer to her. Before he can think twice, Johannes grabs Lionel by the collar and blurts out that they cannot involve Alm. They have to investigate the case themselves. Lionel stares at him in complete confusion and asks what suddenly gets into him. Johannes' mind goes completely blank as he struggles to come up with an excuse. Then, he suddenly remembers someone. His uncle. Perhaps his uncle can help them instead. Lionel's eyes widen in surprise. He asks if Lord Samuel is actually still alive. Meanwhile, back in the slums, the villagers are still talking about Lionel's failed proposal. One of the men bursts into laughter, saying that rejecting a prince so coldly is exactly what he expects from Alm. She grits her teeth in embarrassment and insists that it is not funny at all. An elderly woman chuckles before pointing out that stories involving saintesses and princes always remind her of the past. Hearing that, another villager with a thick black beard smiles nostalgically. He recalls Prince Samuel and Saintess Elsha, the beloved couple who once earns the admiration of the entire kingdom. Their reforms transform the nation, and even the slums become far safer because of. Listening quietly, Alm grows curious and asks what happens to them. The elderly woman sadly explains that, around 10 years ago, Saintess Elsha and her children die in a devastating fire at their mansion. Prince Samuel is consumed by grief and abandons the royal palace soon after. Without the two of them, all the reforms they fight so hard to achieve are gradually undone, allowing corruption to spread throughout the kingdom. She sighs and says that many citizens still wish Lord Samuel would return someday. Back at the Grand Temple, Lionel quietly nods after hearing Johannes' explanation. He admits that everything finally makes sense now. Johannes replies that he is just as surprised because he never expects to run into his uncle again after all this time. Lionel immediately asks if Johannes can arrange a meeting with Lord Samuel. Johannes readily agrees, but cannot help asking why he is suddenly so interested. Lionel enthusiastically declares that the decision is already made. If they hope to uncover the truth behind the stolen miasma, then Lord Samuel is exactly the ally they need. Johannes hesitates and reminds him that his uncle retires from public life years ago. Lionel simply smiles with confidence. He is certain Lord Samuel will lend them his strength because that is the kind of man he is. Thinking about it fills him with renewed determination. Besides, he cannot keep sitting around feeling miserable forever. Johannes blinks in confusion and asks why Lionel would be depressed in the first place. From his perspective, everything between Lionel and Alm seems to be going perfectly. Lionel stares at him with a blank expression before calmly revealing the truth. He confesses that he proposes to Alm, and she rejects him without the slightest hesitation. Johannes' face instantly turns pale. Before he can say anything, Lionel points a finger at him and says he already knows what Johannes is thinking. He knows everyone believes proposing to the Grand Temple's precious saintess is reckless, but his feelings are completely genuine. He truly falls in love with Alm. Unfortunately, she sends him flying clear across the cathedral before he cannot even land on his feet. Embarrassing as it is, he admits that he deserves it. That is exactly why he is feeling heartbroken. Johannes suddenly struggles to hide the smile spreading across his face. Lionel notices immediately and asks why he suddenly looks so happy. The truth finally dawns on Johannes. Alm is never shy. She is not blushing because she accepts Lionel's feeling. She is simply furious while rejecting him. A wave of relief washes over him. Barely holding back his excitement, Johannes enthusiastically tells Lionel to keep his spirits up. He even offers an awkward apology on Alm's behalf for being so harsh. Inside, however, he is celebrating. If even Prince Lionel fails to win Alm's heart, then perhaps his greatest rival is already out of the picture. Just then, Lionel calmly tells him not to misunderstand. His heartbreak is not as hopeless as it seemed. Although he is deeply ashamed of hurting Alm with his careless words, something unexpected happens after. At first, he finds it unbelievably creepy, but somehow, he gradually grows strangely attached to it. Curious, Johannes asks what he means. Without another word, Lionel takes out the handmade doll. The moment Johannes sees it, his eyes nearly pop out of their socket. Lionel smiles faintly as he gently holds the doll in his. He says that, for some reason, this strange little gift becomes one of his most treasured possessions. Johannes' jaw slowly drops. That is the doll he spends an entire week making with all his love. A second later, he lets out a horrified scream and bolts through the temple at full speed. Watching him sprint around in complete panic, Kazara sighs and mutters that the prince has finally lost whatever sanity he has left. Meanwhile, Johannes continues running in circles, clutching his head as he cries out that he is completely doomed. The following morning, Alm arrives at the vegetable stand and immediately notices Hindo and Domi beaming with excitement. Dressed in matching uniform, the two brothers proudly show off their new outfits. Curious, Alm asks what is going on. They excitedly tell her that they finally managed to get jobs at a mansion. Smiling brightly, they ask her what she thinks of their uniform. Alm's eyes light up as she congratulates them, saying they both look wonderful. Domi explains that most of the servants at the mansion suddenly fall ill, so the brothers are hired as temporary replacement. Hearing that, Alm immediately asks if everyone at the mansion is alright. Hindo quickly nods before happily adding that they are even getting paid, so they plan to work harder than ever. Delighted for them, Alm kneels down and reaches into her. The brothers tilt their heads in confusion as she tells them they both deserve a little present. She gently places matching cat ear hats on their heads. The two boys blink in surprise. Alm explains that while shopping with Lady Sarah and the others the other day, she spots the hats and instantly thinks they would suit the brothers perfectly. She shyly asks if they like them. Their faces immediately brighten as they excitedly shout that they absolutely love them. Seeing their smiles, Alm cannot help smiling too. Hidden behind a nearby tree, a large man silently watches the entire scene. Grinding his teeth, he realizes that he finally finds the rumored saintess living in the abandoned park. According to the rumors, she casually sends thugs flying through the air and defeats anyone who causes trouble in the slums without even realizing. The man scowls and mutters that it is about time someone teaches her what happens when she acts like she owns the place. One of his companions nervously reminds him about the mysterious powers people keep talking about. The man simply smirks and replies that he has no intention of fighting her. In situations like this, the smartest approach is to exploit a person's weaknesses instead. Meanwhile, Johannes and Lionel arrive outside Lord Samuel's house. Johannes glances at Lionel and quietly asks if they are really going through with this visit. Lionel frowns and asks why Johannes is bringing that up after they already travel all the way there. Johannes awkwardly explains that his uncle seems perfectly content living a peaceful retired life. Ignoring the concern, Lionel confidently knocks on the front door and says not to worry. Even though Lord Samuel retires years ago, he is still the remarkable man everyone admires. After waiting for several moments in complete silence, Johannes wonders if his uncle simply plans to ignore them. Refusing to give up, Lionel pounds on the door again and loudly calls out to Lord Samuel, begging him to hear them out because they desperately need his help. Johannes quietly asks him to stop making so much noise. At that very moment, the front door suddenly swings open. Looking thoroughly annoyed, Lord Samuel demands to know who, making such an unbearable racket. He grumbles that if they are trying to sell him something, they can leave immediately because his hangover is already splitting his head apart. The moment he recognizes the two visitors, he quietly shuts the door again without another word. About 10 minutes later, Lord Samuel finally invites them inside and offers them seats. Looking at the two princes, he admits that their unexpected visit catches him completely off guard. When they ask about his hangover, he casually pretends not to know what they are talking about. Lionel smiles politely and remarks that it has been quite a long time. Lord Samuel studies him for a moment before commenting on how much he has grown. Lionel wastes no time getting to the point. He asks whether Lord Samuel would be willing to help them investigate a certain incident. Lord Samuel raises an eyebrow and asks what kind of incident could possibly require someone who is already retired. As far as he is concerned, the only thing he is qualified to do these days is give Johannes advice about romance. Lionel looks completely confused, while Johannes nearly jumps out of his seat and hurriedly begs his uncle to stop talking. Composing himself, Johannes explains that Lord Samuel is exactly the person they need. His years of experience working alongside a saintess, combined with his deep understanding of the royal palace's inner affairs, make him the perfect person to ask for help. After everyone settles down with a cup of tea, Lord Samuel quietly listens to their explanation before nodding in understanding. So, for the past several years, the miasma around the capital has been mysteriously disappeared. He remarks that miasma never simply vanishes on its own. If it disappears, then someone must be secretly collecting. Pulling off something on that scale would require accomplices within both the royal palace and the Grand Temple. Lionel nods in agreement. They strongly believe someone is deliberately gathering the miasma, and the anti-royalist faction appears to be the most likely suspect. Whatever they are planning, it is almost certainly something dangerous. Lord Samuel calmly asks whether they have any concrete leads or suspects. Johannes reluctantly admits they have none. The king's faction has created countless enemies over the years. Lord Samuel chuckles softly, saying he expects as much. Even so, they can still narrow the list considerably. Anyone capable of secretly collecting such vast amounts of miasma without alerting the Grand Temple must possess tremendous influence, an extensive network, and enough authority to exploit the chaos that follows. It would have to be someone fiercely opposed to the king, yet patient, calculating, and skilled at manipulating others from the shadows. In other words, the person who stands to gain the most from the king's downfall would be? Johannes suddenly blurts out a single name: Crendel. Lord Samuel looks at him in surprise and asks if he is referring to the Prime Minister. Johannes' eyes widen as the realization finally sinks in. He exclaims that Crendel must be the mastermind behind everything. Lionel remains thoughtful. He admits that Crendel is certainly ambitious, but he cannot help wondering whether even he would truly go that far. Johannes quickly adds that there are even rumors claiming Crendel often wanders around with an evil grin, muttering about overthrowing the royal family. Lionel lets out a tired sigh and admits that, while the Prime Minister always carries an unsettling aura, rumors alone are hardly enough to prove anything. Lord Samuel nods before telling them to set aside the question of guilt for now. Instead, he asks whether Crendel makes any suspicious moves recently. Johannes and Lionel exchange glances before recalling that the Prime Minister has been sending people into the slums on a regular basis. Lord Samuel raises an eyebrow in surprise and asks why someone like Crendel would suddenly take such an interest in the slums. The two princes immediately fall silent with gloomy expression, both thinking about Alm. Seeing their awkward reactions, Lord Samuel looks back and forth between them before asking what on earth is wrong with the two of them. Do they know something they are not telling him? The pair simply avoid his gaze. Lord Samuel scratches his head and awkwardly apologizes, admitting he has no idea what is going on anymore. Meanwhile, Kazara and the other saints pays visit to Alm for a tea. Kazara becomes shocked to hear that she really gifted that strange-looking hats to the guys. Alm happily nods and says they absolutely love them. Kazara can only stare in disbelief before sighing that, as long as the boys are happy, she supposes that is all that matters. She then adds that if they are meeting for tea, there are plenty of lovely cafes she could have recommended instead. Alm smiles and replies that she actually finds the abandoned park far more peaceful and relaxing. Kazara shakes her head, convinced once again that Alm is truly an unusual person. Changing the subject, Alm asks whether everything is going smoothly at the Grand Temple. Kazara scoffs and asks how much longer Alm plans to worry about them. She already tells her that everything is under control. Well, except for one particularly annoying pest. Confused, Alm asks what pest she is talking about. Kazara grimaces and explains that she means a certain troublesome, disgusting little nuisance who somehow becomes even creepier lately. A thought suddenly crosses Kazara's mind. She abruptly asks Alm whether she has any intention of getting married. Alm nearly jumps out of her seat in shock and repeats the word, completely caught off guard. Kazara explains that if Alm had a reliable knight in shining armor by her side, perhaps that annoying pest would finally leave her alone. She even knows a respected trading company with plenty of excellent young bachelors. In fact, she proudly produces a confidential matchmaking book packed with promising candidates. To Kazara, it is practically an all-you-can-choose bachelor catalog. Alm hurriedly tells her to stop, completely bewildered by how the conversation jumps from pests to marriage. She firmly says that she has absolutely no intention of getting married. Kazara quietly closes the book and lets out a disappointed sigh. Hearing the word marriage causes Alm to recall something her mother once tells her. Back then, her mother gently reminds her that, as a saintess, she alone should decide the path she wishes to follow. Looking back now, those words almost sound like a farewell, as though the moment Alm leaves home, she will no longer have any ties to her family. Now that those ties are completely severed, even the thought of marriage proposals feels meaningless to her. Noticing her silence, Kazara gently smiles and admits that Alm is still very young. Marriage can certainly wait. Rather than worrying about husbands or proposals, she should spend her time doing the things she genuinely wants to. Alm quietly repeats those words to herself. The things she truly wants to do. She lowers her head, realizing she has no answer. Seeing her expression, Kizara asks if she is not living this life because it is what she chooses for herself. Alm softly admits that she honestly does not know what she wants anymore. Just then, one of the saintesses glances at the clock and reminds Kizara that they need to return to work. Kizara apologizes to Alm, explaining that things are especially busy lately, but promises they will have tea together again soon. Alm apologizes as well for keeping everyone from their duties. Before leaving, Kizara hands her a small device. Curious, Alm asks what it is. Kizara proudly explains that it is a newly developed anti-pest protection device. Alm thanks her before climbing into her carriage. As she heads back toward the slums, she quietly wonders why she still chooses to live there. Even she cannot fully understand the answer anymore. Her thoughts soon drift to Hindo and Domi, making her wonder how the brothers are doing at the mansion. Meanwhile, inside the mansion, the elderly butler warmly praises the two boys for their excellent work, saying they are every bit as capable as the rumors suggest. Hindo notices the old man coughing and immediately asks whether he is feeling all right. The butler explains that many members of the household staff have fallen ill over the past few years, so the brothers' help is a tremendous relief. He sincerely thanks them before curiously asking about the unusual cat ear hats they are wearing. Outside the mansion, two kidnappers quietly observe the estate from the shadows. One of them stares in disbelief and asks whether they are seriously telling him those two brats actually work in a mansion like this. He mutters that they just look like ordinary street kids, not children connected to such a grand estate. Their leader immediately snaps at him to stop wasting time on pointless details. Their mission is incredibly simple. They will kidnap the two boys, use them as hostages to lure the saintess into a trap, then hand her over to the underworld bosses in exchange for an enormous reward. Elsewhere, Johannes lets out an exhausted sigh while continuing the discussion with Lord Samuel. He wonders whether searching through the slums will really lead them to any clues about the missing miasma. Lord Samuel immediately asks what he is talking about. Even if the slums are only one piece of the puzzle, they remain one of the most suspicious locations in the entire capital. Johannes quickly argues that he already explains the Prime Minister's frequent trips to the slums probably have nothing to do with the miasma. Lionel looks at him before calmly telling him to stop dismissing the idea so quickly. Even if it sounds like they are grasping at straws, that cannot possibly be the only suspicious detail they discover so far. Back at Lord Samuel's house, he is surprised to learn that the slums are the only part of the capital where no miasma outbreaks are ever reported. Johannes explains that, over the past several years, miasma has been discovered and purified in many districts throughout the city. However, the slums are the only area where they have no official records at all. Lord Samuel frowns and asks if that means nothing ever happens there. Johannes shakes his head and explains that it is not that simple. The authorities rarely receive reports from the slums in the first place, making it impossible to know whether any miasma appears there. Frustrated, Lord Samuel asks why no reports ever reach them. Johannes answers that the people living in the slums are so neglected that their voices simply never reach the palace. Lionel quietly adds that the district has been ignored for years, although that is a much longer story. Lord Samuel sighs in disappointment, calling the situation disgraceful. Johannes quickly speaks up, insisting that miasma naturally gathers in places filled with suffering, disasters, and misfortune. That is precisely why patrols regularly search the capital. Whenever miasma is found, it is purified immediately. He asks Lord Samuel to have a little faith in them. Lord Samuel stares at him for a moment before telling him to get his feet off the table. He then nods thoughtfully and concludes that, in other words, the slums are one enormous blind spot. Without another word, he announces that they are heading there immediately to investigate. Johannes and Lionel both freeze before reluctantly following after him. Noticing their unusually gloomy expressions, Lord Samuel asks why the two of them suddenly lose all their enthusiasm. Deep down, Johannes knows exactly why. Running into Alm again would be painfully awkward after everything that happens between them. Lionel is thinking the exact same thing. Returning to the place where Alm brutally rejects his proposal is hardly an experience he wants to relive. Neither of them can possibly admit the real reason for their hesitation. If they cross paths with Alm again, they are convinced she will reject them all over again. Watching their reactions, Lord Samuel suddenly smirks as a thought crosses. He teasingly asks Johannes whether he is secretly worried about the saintess who lives somewhere around the slum. Lionel immediately turns toward him in surprise and asks if he knows about Alm. Lord Samuel casually replies that he only hears about her recently before asking Lionel not to tell him he knows her as well. Looking at both of their embarrassed faces, Lord Samuel quietly chuckles to himself. A mysterious saintess capable of wrapping 2 princes around her finger certainly makes for an interesting story. Johannes hurriedly protests, insisting his uncle has the completely wrong idea and begging him to listen first. Before he can explain himself, a terrified scream suddenly echoes through the streets. Lionel immediately snaps his head toward the sound and asks what that is. Johannes instantly recognizes it as someone crying for help. Just then, 2 frightened bystanders rush past them, shouting that a pair of thugs are chasing some children near. Without hesitation, Lionel orders everyone to hurry over. A few minutes earlier, Hindo and Domi desperately struggle against 2 kidnappers who roughly grab hold of them. One of the men sneers that the boys should stop resisting and quietly come along if they know what is good for them. Domi immediately steps in front of his younger brother and demands that they let Hindo go. One of the kidnappers laughs and says that if the brothers behave themselves, they might consider it. The other man explains that the boys are close to Lady Alm, which makes them the perfect hostage. Once they capture the children, they can use them to blackmail the saintess. Domi's eyes widen in disbelief as he asks why they would do something so cruel. The kidnapper smirks and replies that Alm has become far too full of herself. She is getting in everyone's way, and plenty of people would gladly pay to see her. Before the men can react, Hindo suddenly bites one of them on the hand before grabbing his brother and making a run for it. Furious, the kidnappers chase after them, shouting that the boys just make the biggest mistake of their lives. They promise to make the brothers regret it. As the men finally catch up and prepare to strike, Hindo squeezes his eyes shut, convinced everything is over. At that exact moment, the cat ear hats on both brothers' heads suddenly begin glowing with sparkling eyes before letting out an ear-splitting alarm. The kidnappers clutch their ears in agony, screaming as the piercing sound echoes through the street. Completely bewildered, they ask what kind of ridiculous alarm this is. Domi suddenly realizes the hats are the very gifts Alm gives them. One of the kidnappers finally notices that the deafening noise is coming from the silly-looking hat. He angrily shouts that such childish tricks will never scare them away, but the unbearable sound makes his ears feel as though they are about to burst. Just as Hindo stares at the glowing hats in confusion, the alarm abruptly stops. A strange magic circle suddenly appears on the wall behind the kidnapper. A sleepy voice echoes from within it, wondering what all the commotion is about. Alm lazily yawns and rubs her eyes, complaining that she is enjoying a perfectly good afternoon. She casually explains that she places a protective enchantment on the boys' hats just in case they ever get into trouble, although she certainly does not expect it to activate so. Still half asleep, she jokingly asks whether a ghost shows up or something. The kidnappers slowly turn around, their jaws dropping in horror as Alm suddenly appears before. One of them stammers that a ghost really does appear. Hindo excitedly asks why she is here. Smiling gently, Alm reminds the brothers about the strange old man who chases them. After that incident, she secretly places a protective blessing on both of them so she can immediately come to their rescue if they are ever in danger again. One of the kidnappers nervously mutters to his partner that he already warns him the rumors about the saintess's bizarre magic are real. His companion can only gulp as he realizes the stories are not exaggerated after all. Alm points at the 2 thieves and asks the boys who they are. Domi and Hindo quickly shake their heads, saying they have no idea. The men suddenly appeared, tried to kidnap all 3 of them, and planned to sell them for money. Alm turns toward the pair and calmly asks if they are really the bad guys. One of the thieves lets out a mocking laugh, saying that is exactly why they never show mercy, even toward women and children. He smirks, adding that she saved them the trouble of tracking her down by walking straight into their hands. If she does not want those little kitty hats getting destroyed, she had better do exactly as they say. To prove his point, he snatches the hats, throws them onto the ground, and crushes them beneath his boots. Alm's eyes widen as she stares at the ruined gifts. Her hands begin to tremble with anger. Through clenched teeth, she mutters that they are unbelievably cruel. Those hats were precious presents. They may not have been beautiful, but they were heartfelt gifts. The larger thief bursts into laughter and taunts her, asking if she is finally about to lose her temper. He dares her to stop glaring and do something instead. Raising the second hat, he grins and says this one will be sliced clean in half next. In an instant, Alm's expression changes completely. The other thief freezes as a chill runs down his spine. She slowly points at him and quietly asks what exactly he thinks he is doing. The smaller thief blinks in confusion, unable to understand why the atmosphere suddenly becomes so terrifying. Ignoring them, Alm calmly reaches into her bag and mutters that the device is not nearly strong enough yet. Maybe it just needs a few adjustments. The larger thief immediately panics and shouts for her to stop. He yells that she cannot simply do whatever she wants because the child is still his hostage. Before he can make another move, Alm throws the device straight at him, sending him crashing to the ground. She quietly apologizes to Kazara, admitting she still has not learned the proper way to use the anti-pest security device she received, so improvising will have to. Holding up another one, she proudly announces that it is called the cockroach acid bait ball. Both thieves stare at her in complete disbelief. The moment she starts throwing them one after another, they scream that she is using them completely wrong. A second later, the pair are blasted off their feet and collapse onto the ground, completely defeated. Alm immediately rushes over to Domi and Hindo, anxiously asking if they are hurt. Hindo smiles, assures her he is fine, and thanks her for rescuing them. Alm lets out a relieved sigh and says it is unfortunate that their cat hats were ruined, but as long as both of them are safe, nothing else matters. Just then, Domi notices Hindo swaying unsteadily and asks what is wrong. Hindo quietly admits that now everything is over, his body suddenly feels weak. Alm studies him more carefully, and her expression instantly changes. She gasps as she senses residual miasma lingering throughout his body. Confused, she wonders how miasma ended up inside him in the first place. Meanwhile, Lionel hurries through the slums, convinced the voice came from somewhere nearby. The uncle says he only hopes they finally find some kind of lead. Johannes sighs and says he would not get his hopes up. Suddenly, all three of them stop in their tracks as a massive magic circle appears before their eyes. Alm lowers her hand with a relieved smile, believing everything is finally over. The next moment, she notices the three men staring at her in shock as they call out her name. Elsewhere, a mysterious man slowly raises a massive crystal high into the sky. A faint smile spreads across his face as he murmurs that Dark Mage, Seed of Calamity, and the Saintess' greatest enemy are hardly flattering titles. Still, if those names help him achieve his ambition, people are free to call him whatever they like. The crystal has already absorbed more than enough miasma. At long last, the time has come to bring this kingdom to its end. And that concludes the video for today. If you want another part, leave a comment and subscribe to the channel.